Okay, I think we're live now. Let's see what we have here. We got 51 people on and counting, 52. If you have questions, go ahead and type them into the chat. I'll try to answer them in order, and I do have some questions over here on my iPad from LinkedIn that I'll answer as well. But let me start with just some words for those looking at 2023. The early registration for May is now over. I think that ended on the 9th. And I think you have till end of January, January 31st to register for May. For the August session, I think you have till February 1st. Could be January 31st as well. I think it's around the same date for early registration for February. I think there's enough time for May. Financially, you're past the point of the discounted price. So if the finances are important, waiting till August, I don't think is a big deal. But you're looking at the summer for studying as well. If you are going to write for May, I wouldn't wait till January to begin, because May is level two is of the three exams, I'd say it's probably the most challenging. Level one is really a lot of declarative knowledge. If you have an undergrad in a business, you probably have already bumped into half that stuff, if not three-quarters of that stuff anyways. Level two is a bit more challenging because it's a valuation level. So it's a lot more process-oriented. And you don't memorize your way through valuation. You have to work your way through it, which means you have to do problems. You have to work problems to really get the math into your head, so that you don't have to keep remembering, do I add this, subtract this, am I multiplying, what formula do I use? So I wouldn't wait until January to do that. If you're going to do August, well, then yeah, you could take the rest of the year off and do January. I just wanted you to be aware of what dates there were for 2023. That being said, let's see what kind of questions we have in the chat right now. Let's see, two questions. 10 days until exam sitting. I've done QBank after QBank, after mock, and am scoring well. I've been focusing on the areas I'm weakest in. Okay. But now that I've been focusing on weak areas, I keep finding other areas deep in the curriculum that I'm not best at. Should I focus on high level now and weak areas now, or should I really seek out the minutia? So let the learning objective be your guide for this. So if you find some minutia in the reading and you're thinking, should I really dive into this? Look up at the learning objective and see if the learning objective even discusses that. For example, you probably in quant will notice that you're given a formula for skew and kurtosis, but nowhere does it say calculate. In other words, trying to remember those formulas would be a waste of time. It's better to understand, well, what is skew? What is negative skew? What is positive skew? Good enough. What is kurtosis? What is lepto versus meso versus platykurtic distributions? Good enough. But to know the formulas for them, that's getting into the minutia, and it's not dictated by the learning objective. So whenever you're a little bit confused as to, well, should I dive a little deeper here? Let the learning objective be your guide. In the newer readings for 2023 for level one, I shouldn't say the newer readings, but the newer versions of the existing readings, where the reading is broken into modules, there is less of that kind of thing going on. There is less minutia going on, which means the modules really hold tightly to the learning objective. So for 2023, the readings that have been placed as modules have fewer words, more examples, more of a stress on conceptual rather than quantitative, but less of that minutia to distract you to say, well, should I dive into this thing or dive into that? So short answer, let the learning objective be your guide. If it is in the learning objective, as far as CFAI is concerned, it's all fair game. If the learning objective says describe kurtosis, that's it. You describe. The question will be structured such that you can answer it verbally. You will not then be given a bunch of numbers and asked to calculate kurtosis, because that was not the learning objective. Nowhere were you prepared to do that, because the learning objective didn't require that. So I would stay true to the LOSs. What else do we have? Recommended study order. Now, this really comes down to how you want to do things. Some people like to get the easy sections out of the way first to get some fast victories behind them, to knock them out of the way and say, okay, that's done, that's done. Probably the easiest section at level 2, or the 2 easiest sections. And this is just based on, when I say easiest, not from my perspective, but easiest from the crowd perspective, is based on where the questions cluster in the comment section. So the sections that tend to get the fewest amount of questions in order basically is corporate finance, gets the fewest, followed by alternative investments, kind of the fewest there, and then equity. Equity is not hard. It's just long, and there's lots of valuation formulas, but they're not hard. It's actually quite easy to do. It's just there's a lot. It's just so big. So you can start with the easy stuff and work your way up to the hard stuff. Level 2, the hard stuff is considered fixed income, derivatives, and quant. Maybe economics if you're not strong on currencies. And portfolio management has a couple of challenging readings in there, although it's generally not that difficult. But there are, I think, 2 that can be quite challenging. Or you can do it the other way. Some people like to say, let me get the hard stuff out of the way so that I don't run out of time on the hard stuff. That if I have to speed up in the end, it's easier to speed up on the easy stuff than it is on the hard stuff. The hard stuff requires time to digest, time to reflect on. So you want to do that early in the process so that you don't run out of time. And if you do, well, the easy stuff is easy. You can catch quite a bit of it just by listening to the videos. What's hard, what's easy, it depends on you. I find derivatives super easy. So if I had to rank subjects from hard to easy, for me, derivatives would be right at the bottom, because it would be easy. For some people, it would be difficult. Based on where questions cluster, the 3 most challenging sections are quant, derivatives, and fixed income. So set your pace how you want. A good mix is to have distributed learning, that rather than focus on one section and only one section at a time, pair them. Pair a hard section with an easy section. Say, okay, well, I'm going to do quant and corporate finance. So this way here, you'll go through the 2 sections at the same time, and you'll split your time between the 2. And quant may span a couple of easy sections, but this way here, you don't feel like you're in quant forever. And it took you 5 weeks to get out of quant, and oh my God, the pressure, and I'm feeling this weight that by the time you get out of quant, you've taken out an easy section as well, which is corporate finance. So now you're 20% of the way through the material if you think that, well, I've got 2 sections done. Ethics you've seen at level 1. So it's not as if it's brand new. It's the same code and standards. It's the same thing. So you basically already got 1 section done. So it's really only 9 sections. So you can, go through it that way. What do we have next here? Action plan for the last 10 days. So for this, I don't know that you're going to solve any big problems in the last 10 days. If you can't get your head around, let's say, the fixed income, valuing bonds with options. If you can't get your head around that, I don't know that 10 more days is really going to do very much for you. So I would say at this point in time, you probably want to do more of the same, but more of the same, whatever it is that you've been doing. And more questions, more mock exams, I don't know if that's going to be enough. I think what you want to do is take the review notes and teach an invisible class. In other words, you're not just going to read the review notes. You're going to say, okay, well, here's page 1 of the review. It's broken down, LOS. Here's your information for that. All the review pages, I think, are only 8, 9 pages long. Try to explain it all to an invisible class. That means you're going to, not just read the sentence, but explain what it means. That's a great way to internalize everything, is when you have to actually discuss it, not just read the line and try to remember the line, because sometimes we read things mechanically without actively reading it. But when you have to read it and then verbalize it, explain it in different words to an audience, or to teach something on a page, not just read it to somebody, but to teach it to somebody, it sort of ingrains in your mind a lot better. So do some of those exercises. Try it for one reading. See how it feels. At the end of one review, it might take you half an hour to go through that one reading and go through that exercise. But then reflect on it and see if you can remember it a little bit better. We remember stories better than we remember lists. So if you can teach it to someone using examples and telling a story, you'll remember it better. But other than that, I don't know so much that I would change course. But with 10 days left, try thinking about the exam this way for your level 2. Do you want this to be the second last time you write the level 2 exam? And if the answer is no, then it's a matter of, okay, well, 10 days, you got to lean into it, which means if you're thinking about 2 hours a day, bring it up to 4. Lean into it, because there's only 10 days left, and you want this to be the last level 2 exam you write. What else have we got? How should I manage topics that I am weak in without forgetting to train the most important ones? Okay, so let's say that you're strong in topic A and weak in topic B, and you're worried that, well, if I let topic A go, just to get to topic B, I may forget some of topic A. You won't forget. You won't forget. Once you've learned it, as long as you review it about every 7 days, you don't forget it. It's when you leave it for 30 days or 60 days that you'll start to forget it. But once you know it, you can walk away for a couple of days, you come back to it. As soon as you see the lines again, as soon as you see your review notes again, you read them through once, it's all there. You really don't forget it. And sometimes walking away from something for 3 or 4 days that you really know helps you make connections you otherwise couldn't see because you were too close to it. So stepping away is okay. So if you want to do a 2-day intense deep dive into that one section you don't know, where you say, I'm going to go line by line, and I'm going to think it through, and I'm going to be very careful about it, and that's all I'm going to focus on. And then you go back to the first topic, you won't have forgotten anything. Don't worry about that. So just, if you want to do a deep dive in that topic that you don't know, in hopes of getting an extra 2 or 3 questions right, yeah, sure. Let's see. What is your recommended time split between the areas we are doing well on and the areas we're somewhat competent on? It is difficult to go from 80% to 90%. I shouldn't say it's difficult. It's much more difficult and time consuming to go from 80% to 90% knowledge in a topic than it is to go from 60 to 70%. So if you're looking to get an extra 10% improvement somewhere, the ones that you know, let it go. The ones that you don't know, that you've struggled on, let it go, because it's going to be difficult, because you have some kind of mental block. There's something that you're missing. There's a piece of the puzzle you're missing. So the ones that you think, oh, I just don't get this. Well, okay, so you don't get that. Is there another topic where you go, I'm almost there? There you go. That's the one you want to get to. The one where you have the best possibility of going from 60 to 70 or 80%. The 80s, leave them be. The 40s and 50s, I would opt for a section that I've got a C grade on, and bring that up to a B before I look at a section that I have a D and try to bring it up to a C. The Bs are easier to upgrade to A's. The C's are easier to upgrade to B's, but D's are hard to get into C. It's a D because you're missing some critical piece it's not coming together, you're not seeing it right, and trying to remember it in the same flawed way isn't going to help you. At least that's the way I've seen it. What do we got? Let's see. CFA portal mock too hard because I'm not able to score more than 65. I don't know. I haven't seen their mock exam. There are some things that are proprietary to them and they don't share. I haven't seen that particular mock exam, so I don't know. What topic order do you recommend? I think I've answered that. In our planner, left menu, the planner's free. Even if you're not a subscriber, you can sign up for a free account. You can get the planner. It has a recommended sequence for level 2 based on difficulty, starting from what is probably not the most difficult, but it starts with quant because that sort of sets, the tone for later readings. If you can understand quant, most of the other readings are not any more difficult than that. So I think it starts with quant, fixed income. Maybe it starts with equity, which is the long one. I'm not really sure now. But it has a recommended sequence, and then you could just change that sequence. With a few weeks in lane, how focused on peripheral details? Already answered that. Let's see. How many days would you suggest for review of level 2? Usually I suggest 28 days, 4 weeks for review. And during those 4 weeks, of course, mock exams are going to be part of your review because you want to see how well you do within a specific time frame on questions that are written not to help you learn, but to test you, what are called summative assessment questions. And that's what mock exams are, but usually 28 days. If you have more full-time hours available, like if you take the last 2 weeks off before the exam and you say, well, some people take 28 days, I'll take 14, but instead of 3 hours a day, I'll do 6 or 7 hours a day, then yeah, probably. Yeah, I think that's fine. Okay. Is this for new candidates or for November? It's for both. If you have questions about 2023, I'm more than happy to answer that as to how to get set up for 2023. But we have a mix of candidates on here that have an exam coming up. Is there such a thing as too much study time? Yeah, kind of a good question. Is there such a thing as too much study time? So let's say that you present me a schedule where you have a job, you show me that you're going to study in the morning, you have your job, you get some personal time, and you're going to study at night, and that's your schedule. In that, I think that's flawed because my first question is, when are you going to have time to think about it? You have to let your mind think about what you've learned, because we don't learn things and everything falls into place. Our mind fills in the blanks for us when we're not even thinking about it. How many times have you struggled with a problem that you can't figure out, some intellectual problem or cognitive problem that you can't figure out, and you let it go only to find 3 hours later you're doing something completely unrelated, and you think, that's it right there, and you figure it out. Your mind will work on it. So think about when you go to the gym and you're lifting weights. That's not actually making your muscle stronger when you lift weights. When you lift the weights, you're actually tearing your muscle down. You're actually damaging your muscle on purpose. You get stronger when you take time off that particular muscle group and you allow that muscle to repair. And when it repairs stronger. Your brain is the same way. When you're learning something new, you sometimes you're learning something where the teaching and the reading is so good that everything just falls into place right away, and you go, I get it. Thank you. And other times you think, I'm not quite getting it. So you're trying to figure things out. Well, that feeling you get, that feeling of frustration, is the same feeling your muscle gets when it has that burn. You know, when you're on your last rep and you're squeezing that one out and your muscle's screaming at you to stop. That level of frustration when you're learning is your brain saying the same thing. It is when that level of frustration, what you're feeling at that point in time, has an actual biological correlate. It is your brain, neurons in your brain reaching out to try to make new connections. So you get this feeling of frustration. Nothing, it's not quite getting there. Walk away from it. You come back, allow those connections to happen. And they do happen in the background. They do happen. And, you'll see things that you didn't see. So I'd say if your schedule is so full of study time that you don't leave time to think, I think that's a little bit of a problem. It would be like working out 8 hours a day, then going back to the gym and doing it 8 hours a day without giving your muscle any time to recover. It's when it's in the recovery phase that you get stronger. All right. Let's see. How much of the level 1 curriculum should we revise prior to starting level 2? Okay, so when you go to our site and you click on level 2 CFA, you click on level 2, and you select the exam date you want. You'll see the by the section or by the package. If you scroll down, there are words written under there in orange that says "See how the level 1 readings apply to level 2." Click on that, and it'll tell you which level 1 readings are important for level 2. Let's see. 12 days to go, getting 53% in mocks. Is it best to review before doing more mocks or just focus on questions? Well, mock exams are what are called summative assessments. They're meant to measure your knowledge. They're not meant to help you learn new things. They're there to measure your knowledge. So continually doing mock exams, hoping to get a better score, is like continually getting on a weigh scale, hoping that you've lost weight without any intervention in between. So if you get on the scale, you don't like your weight, you go do something, and then you come back and you weigh yourself again. Mock exams are a weigh scale for your brain. Is you measure what your brain knows, and if you don't like it, you go away and you do something and you come back. But just to go mock after mock after mock, hoping that the questions you saw and the answers you saw will then improve your knowledge for the next one. Mock exams are not written to help you learn. They're written to test you. Question bank questions are written to help you learn, but not mock exam questions. So I don't know that mock after mock after mock makes a lot of sense. Mock will tell you what interventions you need. Then you come back, you do it again, then it'll tell you what interventions you need. Then you come back, you do it again, and on until it's exam time, right? I wrote level 2 September. Unfortunately, I ended up scoring just under the MPS. Oof. I registered again for May, but I haven't looked at the material since September. Any advice on how to approach a rewrite? Well, you're not starting from scratch. That's number one. Whenever if you're just under the MPS, you're not starting from scratch. You don't need to jump right back into it right away. You will remember faster than you learn. So learning something might take you 4 hours. Remembering it might only take you 45 minutes. So you will remember faster than you learn. You may, in remembering it, learn it better or remember it better in reviewing it after some time off. So I don't know that I would be too concerned that you've forgotten some things at this point, because that's exactly what it is. You've forgotten some things. You didn't unlearn them. You've simply just forgotten them. So just reviewing again, you'll remember what you forgot. You don't have to relearn what you forgot. But, don't wait too long. How do we need to take into account the new debt that will be issued in the future due to the growing size of the firm when calculating the value of equity based on free cash? Oh, okay. So that's going into tutoring. This is not what this session is for. I'm not going to answer specific questions or hold a tutoring session. This is really, really questions about level 2, the process, what learning tactics work well, how do I approach level 2? How can I get a better picture of what it is I'm expecting to know, that kind of thing. But for specific tutoring, what would be the best strategy for retaking level 2 next year for someone who just barely failed the last exam? How much time would be needed to review the weak chapters? That's difficult to answer because everybody is different. So it's the only answer I can give for stuff like that is it takes what it takes for you. How long does it take to learn this? Whatever time it takes for you. And you'll know when you've learned it because you get to that point where you get it, where it all falls into place and you say, well, now I have clarity on this whole topic. I see it. I'm there. How long that takes you to get there, I don't know. I know when I come across something new or a new security or a new something that I haven't come across before, I think, well, okay, I've got to figure out what this thing is. Sometimes I can find the information very quickly. I can read it. I go, okay, makes sense. Other times I'm with it for a couple of days. And I still don't have enough information. I actually have to reach out to people who are in the particular field, say, can you explain this trade to me? I don't quite understand what's going on. It takes what it takes. So how do I know it? It's because I'll know it. It's because it'll all fit into place, and every time I push on something, it'll all make sense. I know that I don't have it when I try to say, okay, well, if this happens, then okay, well, now what happens? Hang on. I thought I had it. You know, when it just slips away from you and you thought you had it and you were just about to explain it and it all just slips away, that means you haven't got it. It takes what it takes. So I can't really answer how long it would take you. I will say this is that time can be your friend or time can be your enemy. You can't buy time. You can only give yourself more time at the beginning of a process. But if an exam is a month away, it's a month away, period. You can't buy another month. But if you're going to write in May and you think, well, I'll start in January, now's the time where you can buy yourself that time. You can say, no, I'll start now and I'll just buy myself a month and a half. I can't buy myself a month and a half in April, but I can buy it now. So just use the calendar to your advantage. Let's see. What do you think is the minimum passing score for L2? I don't know. I haven't really paid too much attention to minimum passing scores, but I think it's mid to high 60s. I don't think it's as high as level 1. I think mid to high 60s, maybe mid 60s, 65. I think. I don't know. Let's see. I'm really struggling with ML, big data, employee compensation. Okay, so for big data, I don't blame you. That was overwritten, extremely overwritten. Here's how you can simplify it a little bit. Every time it starts talking about coding libraries that you can use, ignore all that stuff. Ignore all of that stuff. You're looking for big themes in big data, but the authors really overwrote that reading with way too much detail. Look at the learning objective, and in 5 minutes for each learning objective, in 5 minutes, you should be able to describe that exact learning objective. Describe this. You should be able to describe it within 5 minutes. That's it. That's if you can do that, you're good. I wouldn't dive into all of the tiny little detail about, this library in R that can do this, or you can use that, because they go into a lot of detail like that, and you can ignore that whole case study walkthrough that they give you in big data. For machine learning, there's a good flow chart in there that talks about, well, what is it that you're working with, structured or unstructured data? Are you categorizing or are you predicting? So if you can follow your way through that flow chart, I think that's the lion's share of that reading, is knowing here's the type of data you have, which type of process would you most likely use for this, if you're trying to get this done or you're trying to get that done. I would focus there. As far as employee compensation, it can be a detailed reading. It is okay to let some things go. If you find yourself letting 8 or 9 things go, that's a problem, but it's okay to let some things go, to say, look, my goal is to get 50% on this. I'm going to get the big questions and I'll guess at the other stuff, but the time it would take for me to get this, to get an extra 3 or 6 points over here, I can get another 3 or 6 points somewhere else. So it's okay to let some things go and say, well, Give me 10 hours, I can really get employee compensation. But how much more could you remember about ethics? Because ethics is a memorization game, right? You want to do it right before the exam. So if you spend more time on ethics, it's got a weight of 15%. So if you look at the whole weight of FRA, employee compensation is one reading in that whole section. So can I give up that one little sliver and put all that weight over on ethics? Ethics is memorization. I can memorize, sure. Let's see. Want to ask if it's worth spending time on the subjective blue box. Oh, I just lost that one. Yeah, it just scrolled right past me. So let me see if I can find it again. Wow, I really lost that one, eh? Whew. Look at all these questions. Bear with me, I'll find it. There it is. Okay. We're spending time on the subjective blue box questions in the Q bank that don't have options. Not really. Not really. They're more stories that are meant to give you a little bit more insight into what they were talking about, kind of a way to bring something abstract to the real world. So no, I don't know that I'd spend too much time on that. Failed level 2 once before when a family member passed. Didn't fail by so much. Now I'm going over all the review videos and knocking out mocks. Is there anything else I can do? As I said, this is the point where you lean into it, right? Bought the 2022 books, but I am appearing for 2023. Is there a lot of difference here? Yeah, corporate finance is significantly different. And some parts of quant were changed. I did changes here and there throughout level 2. Every section, I think I had to do something. So yeah, there you will find some difference between 2022 and 2023, but you're a candidate, you're registered for level 2, you have access to the learning ecosystem. You've got the 2023 content right there. You don't have to buy the book. It's right there on the screen. So I think you're okay. It's not as if you don't have access to it now. I'm going to be on Army Reserve duty next week, potentially without access to PC for times. Do you have any readings you think are the most valuable to print out and read? Well, you're gonna want to, if you're just going to be reading, you're probably going to want to stick with readings that are more narrative than quantitative. What are the narrative readings in level 2? Big data is quite narrative. I don't know if there are any big narrative sections. Behavioral finance in oh no, that's level 1. You're in level 2. Fintech, the fintech reading, is that level 2? Yeah, I think so. And of course, well, ethics is all narrative, so you can spend some time reading that. When you say, what are the good ones to print out and read? I don't know that if you mean, non-quantitative, like verbal. So I would say find the verbal readings that are really just narrative and don't have math in them. It's more about learning a concept. Is there any approach to really understand what I'm learning, since there is always some topic I just couldn't grasp? So let me see if I can give you an example of it about being the concept. So let's take pricing out an option in a callable bond using a binomial tree. So we know the steps you have to calibrate a tree, and then you price it out, and every time you bring it back one node, you look for where the bond would be called, and if it's got a price of 102, you mark it down to 100, and you keep going backwards till you find the price of the option in the bond by comparing it with what a non-callable risk-free bond would be. So if I say, give you a setup scenario that the central bank is expected to raise rates 50 basis points at the next meeting. The Treasury market has only priced in a 30 basis point move. What is the most likely effect on callable bonds? You'd have to say, well, if I use Treasury rates right now, it's pricing at 30 of the 50, which means these rates are too low. What if rates in the tree were sudden, if all the forward rates were higher all of a sudden? You'd have to think about, well, what does that mean for the price of the callable bond? If you're using higher rates, you're going to have lower prices at each node. Lower prices mean less probability of being called. You would have a cheaper call option embedded in the bond. That's more conceptual, is to be able to not calculate it, but to see it, to see the relationship that exists, so that at any given point in time, if you're in the market and you're a bond investor and you have callable bonds or puttable bonds, you have to have some assessment of where rates are going and how much the market is priced in. If it's overpriced or underpriced the next move, and then you'd be able to intuitively know at that point, well, what's the effect it's going to have on these particular bonds versus a straight bond, and should I make some moves now? That's more conceptual. You're not going to sit down and actually calculate that out, but you will see the relationship that exists. Let's see. Taking the exam on the 24th, average 60 to 62 range. Should I just cram formulas for the next 10 days? Well, that requires me to have an assessment of how well you know formulas now. I mean, if you find that that's your weak point, where every time you have a question in one of the quant sections where you actually have to calculate something, but you're just messing up on the formulas, then I would say, yeah, spend some time on that. But if that's not where you're losing the 38 to 40%, then I would say, well, why are you going to spend some time working on something that doesn't appear to be part of the problem? So figure out, well, why is it that you're losing 38 to 40% on each exam? Is it because you just can't keep the formula straight? Then my answer would be yes. If it's not, then my answer would be not really. Why do we have a minus sign in front of in the Benny? Well, again, that's a content question. I'm not going to answer that, but think it through. If you look at those things, just ask yourself, well, what is each one measuring? And if one of those go higher, is that better for the company? Or is it worse for the company? And then that'll help you understand the signs. The model itself is empirically driven. It's not theoretically driven, it's empirically driven. So the negative sign exists because that's what the data says. Also, an ethics question is okay, let's just skip those. I passed my level 1 back in March. I took a long break. I'm going to sign up for August. What would be the best jumpstart strategy? Well, you can review the important readings from level 1, or you can just jump right into level 2 and review opportunistically. So you may start at level 2 quant, and as you're going through quant, you may say, I don't need to review anything. I remember all this stuff. Or you may get to a point where you say, I forget this stuff. Let me review the 2 or 3 critical readings at level 1 that were important. If you had level 1 with us, you'll have level 1 readings available to you in the archive, which is accessible in the app. So you can go back and review those videos for level 1. How do I elevate my understanding of ethics? That's a good question too. I find that a lot of ethics is not really intuitive. By intuitive, it means that I could not come to the conclusion with logic and come to the same conclusion with logic. I would have to know what the standard is first before I could come to it on my own. So it would have to be given to me, because I wouldn't know what would be considered a standard without knowing it's a standard first. So let me give you an example. Let's say that I don't know how to calculate something. I don't have a formula for calculating something. I can figure it out. I can say, well, what are the variables involved? What am I trying to do? I can, through logic, figure it out. I can derive it from the ground up and come to the same conclusion without ever having seen the formula. If I know what I'm starting with, I can get to that. You can use logic to get to the same answer, but ethics doesn't have that kind of objective structure where I know this and I know this. So it must be, when I put the two together, it must be this. Ethics doesn't have that. So there's a lot more. It's knowledge by committee. Not so much knowledge by science, but knowledge by committee. Is a bunch of people got together and said, well, if we had a standard, what would it look like? What would it sound like? What would it cover? Okay, that sounds great. Let's put this out for opinion. Let's get some opinions in, and let's then re-meet again and see if we can incorporate those new opinions in and come up with a standard. So for those, you pretty much have to know the standard, and you have to accept, okay, so you say that's a standard, that's fine. The logic for it sometimes, when you think, well, why is this a standard? You're not going to be tested on why it's a standard. So for ethics, I would say, look, just accept it. Every firm has a compliance department, and no matter how well you know ethics, you're going to get to a point at everybody gets to a point where they go, I don't know what to do. Then you have to go to the compliance department and say, look, I need a ruling on this. I don't know which way to go. I don't know that anybody's really an expert in ethics, so I don't know if there is some way that I could advise that, oh, well, here, think about it like this. For me, it would be a memorization game, and I think it would be for everybody. Can I approach a topic starting with my weaknesses or following the reading sequence? Yeah, you could start with your weak areas, and because in the beginning you have all the time, so you have more time. So you don't feel the pressure of the calendar. We can't learn under pressure, and we can't learn in a hurry. So you want to use that to your advantage. Any plans on selling hats and shirts? Yes. The not shirts. Shirts are difficult. Shirts are difficult because depending on who makes the shirt, one size may not fit. You may say, well, I'm a medium, but you might not be a medium in the company that we chose to make the shirts from. You may be a large, in which case you have to worry about returns and all of this going two ways. So once you start getting into selling clothes that has different sizes, that's just something we don't want to get into at all. Hats, yes, December 1st, well, maybe a little bit earlier, but December 1st to December 10th, there'll be a 10-day or 2-week window in there where we're going to sell the hats again this year for Christmas. The proceeds this year will be going to a charity here in this area called Pathstone. When I put the video up for it, I'll put all the links for it so you can see what they do. But they support kids. It's primarily targeted. Well, I shouldn't say primarily. It is targeted towards kids with some work with the parents. Kids that have some kind of mental health issue or behavioral issue, something along those lines, where they just don't fit in a contemporary setting somewhere else, where they have difficulty with that. So they've attracted a lot of attention in the area. I think they do good work, so we're going to support them. And it'll be the same thing last time is you buy a hat for a certain price and I match the entire amount and we donate that to the charity. And again, with the same target we had last year for Big Brothers Big Sisters, is the hope of donating $25,000. So for every dollar you spend on a hat, I match it with another dollar, and we leverage that. I think I match it with more than $1. But yeah, there will be hat sales, but not shirts. I know level 2 learning is very different from level 1, but will my level 1 study method work? Review video, follow module, do module EOCQ, lecture videos as needed. Yeah, learning is, it's the process is the same when you learn, but you have to understand that there is a different level of learning. So you can Google Bloom's taxonomy of learning. The very lowest level of learning is called recall or remembering, where you memorize something and you can repeat what you've memorized later on. For some topics, that works. Like ethics is something that I would probably say, my goal in ethics is recall. And if in going through the recall process, I find that I gain some understanding in ethics, great. But my goal is not to get to higher levels of learning like evaluation and synthesis. I'm not concerned with getting to that level. My goal is really just recall. For level 2, or I'd say level 1, recall probably might make up 20 to 25% of the exam. Understanding and application make up the rest, with application being smaller. Application is calculate this. There used to be more calculated at level 1, but it's pulling back. Level 2 has very few recall. In other words, just stuff you regurgitate from memory, that memorization stuff, other than ethics, I think, and more on understanding and application and some evaluation, which is the next level of learning. Just because you can remember something or memorize something doesn't mean that you can evaluate it. So you can give me 1 page of a medical textbook, very advanced stuff. I can memorize that page. I may not have any clue what the hell I'm memorizing. I may be able to repeat things to you on that page, but I got no idea what any of it means. If you say, well, here's a situation, evaluate it, I couldn't do it because all I could do is memorize. So evaluation requires a higher level of learning. Level 2 does require you to step up your level of learning. So let me give you the difference between level 1 and level 2, because level 2 is evaluation, is more of a evaluation level, which really sets you on the path. It's more applied in the sense that these are the things you'd be doing as an analyst. So equity, the cash flow forecasting, discounting cash flow, the different models that you would use, the valuing of different securities and different asset classes. Imagine that you are going to a school, and there's courses on wheat and flour. And you learn everything there is to know about all the different kinds of wheat and all the different kinds of flour that can be milled, and when this flour should be used in what application. You know everything about it. You take another course on sugars. You know every type of sugar there is. You know how this sugar interacts with the wheat, how it interacts with different foods. You are an expert in sugar. You take another course on apples, and you know everything about all the different kinds of apples. That this apple combined with this sugar and this wheat produces this. You know how to put all that together. And then you take another course on how heat affects food. Now you have these 4 courses, and you have to make an apple pie. There's level 1. Okay, if I know all about the wheat and all about the sugar and the apples and the heat, I can put all that together and make an apple pie. You're telling me you're giving me these kind of apples. I remember that these apples work best with this sugar. And if I'm doing that, I don't want the pie crust to get in the way because this has got a great flavor. So I'll use a wheat that sits in the background and lets the taste of the apples and the sugar come forward. Maybe you're giving me a crappy apple, in which case I'll use an apple crumb and a caramel drizzle on top. But you would remember all these things. Level 2, on the other hand, puts 5 apple pies in front of you and says, without tasting it, which one will taste the best? So you have to remember everything from level 1, but level 2 asks you to analyze a little bit more. And that's what an analyst does, is it looks at all these apple pies and it says, based on what I know about how they would be made, I can tell by looking at them and what they have that one would taste the best. So you have to put yourself on the other side, looking backwards at it, as opposed to learning the knowledge and then building something with it. You're given something and you have to evaluate some characteristics about it and determine which one is going to taste best without having seen how they were made. So if you think about level 2 that way, then as you're going through these examples, you start to see, okay, well, I'm not building up to something. These are used to take something out of whole and build down to something more granular. I don't know if that helped or not. Retaker here. How do I get through FSA? I will say that there's very little from level 1 that will help you at level 2. That level 2 is a lot of specialized topics. And it's a lot of how I would think about it is it's written from the perspective of IFRS, and you're told where gap differs. So it's not like you're reading something and you have to know, okay, this is IFRS, this is gap. This is IFRS, and here's where gap differs. So really know IFRS and where gap differs, but don't think of it as two separate things. It's fairly logical in a sense, but it has a lot of, little bit of an accounting rules in there that, if it's this and you call it that, then this is how you would account for it. And so you do have some of that involved, but everyone has a weak section. If FSA is your weak section, then understand that it is your weak section and have a plan for it. So your plan might be, look, I want to get 50% in this section. That's my goal. Let's get 50. I don't want it to take me down, but I know it's not going to make me. So my goal is to get 50% in this section. If I get higher, great, but I'm aiming for 50%. And then put your time into other sections where you can get 70 or 80%. How do you start a business easily? So here is how I would answer any question that ends with that adverb easily. You don't. And if you're looking for something to do easily, sit on a couch and watch TV. You can do that easily. Anything else requires effort. Anything else requires sacrifice. And if your question has the word easily in there, no matter what I tell you, you're not going to do it anyways because you're looking to do something easy. None of those things are easy. Anything worth achieving is not easy. That's why few people achieve it, because it's not easy. You do it precisely because it's not easy, and it's not crowded. And the better you are, the higher you rise, the less crowded it becomes. It is not crowded at the top, my friends, but it's not easy. It does require a sacrifice. So you have to ask yourself, what are you willing to sacrifice in order to start a business? It won't be easy. Now I would like to know if getting more prep providers videos help understand better, or just focusing on practice questions is the way to go. Depends. I don't know that you can get very far with just questions, because let's say that you're doing some questions and you don't know the answer, that you're scoring 60% and you do more questions, you're scoring 60%, you're doing more, you score 60%. What about the next set of questions is going to be any different? That unless you have some learning intervention in between there, how's it going to be any different? Now you can find questions that purport to teach at the same time, but that is very situated learning. In other words, you've learned that particular question, but very rarely in learning that particular question do you learn generalizability, which means if I give you that same question and I just twist it a little bit, you wouldn't recognize it as being the same question. So without that general knowledge, these situated questions that ask specific things, you may say, well, okay, I remember seeing this before and this is how it's answered, but you don't know why. You don't know what generalizability there is. So even if I don't twist the question, but I ask just an adjacent question that you should know, if you knew the stuff to know that answer, you should know this one. But if you learned it from the answer up, you don't have the generalizability to answer something that is, close to it, or even just a small variation of the same question. So, yeah, I would include some learning interventions in between those questions. I'm struggling with pension accounting and corporate investments. Any recommendation on how to grind? Should I review your EOCQs and then attempt problems? I've watched the video 3x, done all the problems. Well, if you watched it 3 times, watching it 4 times, I don't know is going to change anything, that you're having some mental block where you're just not getting it. In which case, when I have had problems like that in the past, and I can remember courses where I'm looking at the reading and I think, I'm just not getting this. I back out of the whole reading and I say, okay, well, never mind the reading. Let me understand the first 2 pages, period. That's all I care about at this point, the first 2 pages. And that's all I'll do. And I'll spend a lot of time on that. Once I get that, I say, okay, I think I can do the 3rd page. And then I do the 3rd page and the 4th, and maybe I'll run out of time. But rather than know the whole chapter 40%, I know half the chapter 80%, right? And it gives me a better feeling because I really know this front end stuff. The more you have that solid foundation, as you start building on that foundation, it goes faster and faster. So if you find that the whole reading is confusing, go back and take a lot more time with the first couple of sections, because that really sets the foundation for what the later sections build on. And if you have a good solid foundation, you can start building on it. But if you have a problem that is 12 steps long, master the first step and ignore all the others, that if you run out of time, at least you know step 1. It's better to know 100% of something than it is to know a little bit about a whole bunch of stuff. So you can, sort of tackle it that way. What should be the action plan for May 2023? Well, give yourself time. It sounds like a long way off, May 2023, but back out 28 days from that for review. So you've got January to about mid-April on that one. So 3.5 months there, maybe 4 if you push it to the beginning of May. December is 5, and we're halfway through November, so you got 5.5 months. But I mean, how much really are you going to get done between Christmas and New Year's, right? You've got, you're at that age where you have to, in your schedule, make time for hangovers. You get up on January 1st after your New Year's Eve day. That's not a work day. That's a massive recover day, right? So you're going to lose that day as well. So I would say, the calendar is on your side right now. Use it to your advantage. Don't fall into the trap of thinking, well, May is so far away, I've got plenty of time. So the action plan would be very simple. The key word here is action. Start taking action. That's how we do anything, with action, not with planning. You can spend hours and hours planning for something that's not going to get you anywhere. So you want to get to your action as quickly as possible. So, the idea of, let me plan this out. I'll take a day and I'll do this. This will be my plan and I'll work it. And you take a whole day to write up a plan. Well, you've gotten no further towards your goal. Take action as soon as you can. Let's see. I'm averaging 60% with your mocks and the CFA mocks. Is it good to pass in 10 days? No. If I say yes, you're just going to say, oh, okay, I'm good. No, it's not. That I would lean into that over the next few days, and I would push hard. What I don't want you doing is coasting at this point in time, not with a 60. Maybe it will. Maybe the real exam is like the mocks I have are written a little bit harder. So maybe the real exam is going to be easier, and maybe you'll get 65 to 70 instead of 60. But I would not be coasting with 60. Will you have a charity hat sale this Christmas? Already answered that. Yeah. Focus more on high weighted subjects. You can, but don't be misled with that. You can have a section that has a weighting of 15%, but has 8 readings. And then you can have another section that is weighted, 10%, but only has 4 readings. Well, that's 2.5% per reading, whereas with 15 readings divided by 8 is 1.6. So you have more points per reading in some of those smaller sections. So a section worth 10%, how many readings though, right? Figure out how many readings there are and what the rough points per average would be per reading. And your bigger impact would be on those. Let's see. I have solved around 1,000 questions on candidate resources, averaging 70% correct. Is that a good place to be at? It is a good trajectory to be on. I don't know if it's a good place to be at. So, yeah, I mean, when you first started, you might have only been scoring 40%. As you started learning and you did questions, you might be at 50, 60, you're at 70. So it's a good trajectory to be on. I don't know that I would say, yeah, stop here, you're good. I would just lean into that. Just really just make sure, just a little bit more. Level 1 can see the value level 2 candidates will find there. Okay. I have 2 questions. Any tips on how to strategize better after failing level 2 in August? I put in the time and studied 350 to 8 and for 8 months did all the OCQ mocks. How do I prepare for it better? Okay, so there's, two things that you can look at when you're preparing is you can say, well, look, the quantity. I put in the quantity necessary. Or at least what you feel is the quantity necessary to pass. I put in this time and I did these things. And then there's quality. So maybe you have 350 to 400 hours, but maybe you needed 450 to 5. Maybe you needed more quantity. I know some subjects in university I needed a lot more time on. Other ones I hardly needed any time at all. Any course with numbers in it was easy A's. They were easy A's. But something like marketing, where you actually had to write something up, I found those to be unsatisfying courses because you never knew if you had the right answer. With a numbers class, you knew when you had a right answer. You knew it. You could prove that you had the right answer. But for something like marketing, where you have to write up, a recommendation from a case study, I always struggled with those courses. It took me much, much longer to do one of those assignments than somebody else who probably scored much higher on verbal acuity than quantitative. So, the amount of time varies per person. It's not some number that if you hit this, you're good. It's everything is personal to you. That's what makes you an individual. There's also getting to the quality of learning as well. The best method for working your way through something you don't understand is attempting to explain it to some invisible person across the desk from you, even when you can't understand it, attempting to explain it, because verbalizing it helps rather than just thinking it through in your mind and going, well, actually verbalizing it helps. And imagine that other person, no matter what you say, simply doesn't get it, which means each time you have to say it simpler and simpler. At some point, you'll go, never mind, I got it, and you'll get it. Bring some of that in. Discuss it with another live person. Have a study group. That matters, because you may think you have a complete picture of something, but you can't know what you don't know. You don't know where your blind spots are. So there may be something that you're missing that you're just unaware of. So bringing somebody else in on it and saying, okay, well, let's meet on Sunday at 2 and let's discuss these 4 learning objectives from this reading, and those 4 learning objectives may be in the heart of it. And what you would do is you'd say, okay, learning objective C, you read it and ask the other person to fulfill it. So if it says describe ABC, you say, okay, describe to me your understanding of ABC. If you both really know it, your descriptions will match each other. But if you don't both really know it, their description and your description will be off somewhat. They'll have some pieces that you need and you'll have some pieces that they need, and that give and take together, now you're taking 2 incomplete pictures with holes in it and you're putting together to form a better, more full whole by using what they know and they using what you know. And hopefully those 2 things, don't overlap such that you both know the same thing incompletely, but that you do have some missing pieces for each other. So that brings quality into the learning as well. Let's see. I was getting 60% consistently in the mocks, but come exam day, I failed the tests. How do you suggest gauging expected performance better when mocks is not a good metric for this? Well, we don't know that the mock was not a good metric for it because you don't have a counterfactual. So to say that I studied 100 hours and I only got 65, clearly it didn't work. You can't say that unless you have an example of which you did not study at all and got the same grade. So if you didn't study and got a 42 and you studied 100 hours and got 60, the 100 hours worked. So to say that the mock exams did not help on the exam, you can't say that unless you have an example of where you did not use it and got the same thing. So without the counterfactual, we can't know what the outcome would have been. That maybe the outcome isn't as good as we hoped, but would have been a lot better without the intervention. So I don't know that I would make that conclusion. The end result is that you didn't make it. So, and scoring 60% is, even if you're scoring 60% consistently, I want you to think about, your undergrad program. If you were getting a consistent D minus, would you have considered that good? Right? I mean, what you're saying is that you went into the exam with a solid D minus. I don't know if that maybe with that little bit of a perspective that might help, right? I just finished all the reading videos in EOCQ and QBanks, never done mock, and now I am puzzled. What is the best way to approach this? So exciting to see. Best way, just do one. They're all half exams. So each one it's not like it's 4.5 hours long. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes long. Try to stay true to the 2 hours and 15 minutes. Stop at the end of 2 hours and 15 minutes. Or what you can do is do it a different way. Rather than try to increase your score within 2 hours and 15 minutes, do it for the maximum score. And each time you write, reduce the amount of time it took you, right? So let's say you start mock exam 1. You're going to say, okay, mock exam 1's open book, and I don't care about the time. So you're reading something, you go, oh, I don't know what that is. Well, go read it. This is beautiful, and I'll tell you why. When you go read it, you're now reading with a question in your head. You're looking for the answer. The words on the page will mean something different to you at that point. You'll be looking for the answer. Do the first one open book. Might take you 4 hours. Okay, do the next one. That might only take you 3.5 hours. And your goal is to get the maximum score while each time you write, minimizing the amount of time it takes you. The first way is to say, I only have this much time, and I'm going to try to increase my score each time. Well, that means that after you write the first one, you must then go and perform all the interventions. Hopefully learning something so that when you write the second time and you have questions in and around those topics, you can do the same thing. The exams that we have are written such that we try to show you every single topic that you could possibly come across. So if you say, well, I'm scoring 60% in each one, that's most likely because when you get to exam 3 AM, the questions that you see are on topics that you hadn't seen in exam 1 or 2, because we're trying to hit every single topic we can. We can't just keep asking the same questions on the same topics again and again. So we try to put as many in there as you can. So even after 3 exams, you may still see questions on topics that you hadn't seen yet, because, well, we don't know what's going to be on the exam. Nobody does. So the most we can do is give you a whole bunch of mock exams that cover as many different topics as possible. What you don't have with the mock exams is the depth. It's not as if you're going to have, I'm going to see a regression question again and again and again and again. It's maybe this is a regression question. Next one might be a time series question. Next one might be machine learning. So even though you have a quant question in every exam, it'll be a slightly different topic in each one. So while you have the appearance that I'm not progressing, it's because these are all different topics from the last one. So yeah, try it that way. Try the open book way, and then your goal each time is to say, okay, well that took me 4 hours. For the next one, let's try to get it down to 3 hours and 45 minutes without sacrificing the score. Then you get it down to 3.5. Then 3 hours and 15 minutes, and you slowly compact it. But you're using open book, which is a great way to combine the exam with review all at the same time. I see a violin in the background. Does classical music play a role in any way? That is Tchaikovsky. That's not a violin. That's a cello. And that is the sheet music in there for Swan Lake, which is probably one of the best that he's done. I like classical music because it doesn't get in the way. You know, you can study with classical music and it's just fantastic. You can think and reflect on life with classical music in the background and it doesn't get in the way. And you end up falling in love with some of these because they touch you in a more emotional way. I don't know how anybody can study with headphones on and rap music playing in their head, and words going on up there, and that bass. I don't get it. I just don't get it. I find that your ability to handle noise is inversely related to your cognitive ability. That the smarter you are, the less tolerant you are of noise when you're thinking, because you have to go so deep. And everything you do is deep. You don't want to do anything surface because you know the richness is underneath. Opera is hard to listen to when you're studying because you can't help but sing along. For some of these, you can't help. So classical music is fantastic. Swan Lake is great. The Nutcracker is fantastic. So yeah, that's Tchaikovsky. By the way, I was when I was in St. Petersburg. There's a graveyard in St. Petersburg where all the famous Russians are buried. Dostoevsky's in there, Pushkin, Rimsky-Korsakov, and Tchaikovsky's grave is in this graveyard as well. I don't know if anyone's ever been to this particular graveyard, but I took pictures of all the famous people in that graveyard. It's hard not to take a picture of every gravestone, but I did stand in front of Tchaikovsky's grave. Let's see. I am panicking. I haven't finished all the readings and not engaged QBank. I finished all EOCQ, but QBank is not finished yet. My exam is February. Oh, well, February. Calm down. Calm down. There's no need to panic. You have lots of time to February. You've got another 3 months. You got another 90 days. There's plenty of time. So just breathe and don't look at the totality of what you have to do. Carve out one thing and one thing only that you're going to get done in the next couple of days. That's it. Some small part of that you're going to get done. Take one reading and say, this is all I have to do. This is my whole world until it's done, and that's it. And then you do the next one and the next one. You can get overwhelmed when you look at the totality of everything you have to do. And when you are overwhelmed, you can't even focus on what you're doing right now, which just now you have just a complete waste of time because you start thinking, how am I going to get everything done when this is taking so much time to do now? I got to pick up the pace. No, that's the wrong way to think about big monolithic tasks like level 2, level 3. You break it down. You break it down into small components, and your goal is to get that first component done. So think about it this way. Completing level 2 is not your goal. You're going to have a learning process. That's it. And you're going to have a speed at which you go and no faster. And that's what you're going to do. And your goal is to do that every day. Your goal is not to get it done by a certain date. Your goal is the process. Have a process, and every day you have a victory because you've met your goal. Your goal was the process. And if you work the process and your goal is the process, the outcome will happen on its own without all of this stuff overwhelming you. So when you're on one reading, that's all you have in front of you is that one reading, because if you don't make it, you don't make it. It's no big deal. You have to let that go. You have to let it go. And focus on where you happen to be right now. And the only task in front of you is to get this thing done. And that's the only thing. And everything else can wait. And if I don't get to it, I don't get to it. But I'm not going to sacrifice my health for this. Because when you're stressed, your body releases a chemical called cortisone. And cortisone is useful in stressful situations. But if you're under stress all the time, your body's just injecting cortisol into your body all the time. And that has a real bad negative effect on your health over a long period of time. Yes, you do have to sacrifice some things to get to levels that other people otherwise couldn't get to. You're going to have to make some sacrifices. But when it comes to sacrificing so much that it sacrifices your health, then I think you are working the wrong process and you have the wrong goal in mind. What's your opinion of the derivative section of level 2? My opinion is well known on that. I don't know that there's been a worse treatment of derivatives, a worse writer, and why accept that type of convoluted, complex, complicated writing when it's so beautifully simple. If you are at level 1 and you get through the time value of money reading, the very next reading could be derivatives, because derivatives is draw a timeline, and you'll notice that derivatives is nothing more than moving money around a timeline. That's it. Time value of money is all you need. All this negative cash flow here, this, that, the other thing, cancel this. I pity that guy's students, because I guarantee you, that professor makes his students use his textbook. And I pity those students because he's made it complicated for no good reason. In other words, there's no incremental benefit from doing all of that extra work. John Hull writes a beautiful textbook because it's simple, it's straight to the point, it's elegant. And if you know how to do time value of money, derivatives are super, super easy to do, because everything in derivatives is time value of money. Everything. So yeah, it's garbage. Can you please suggest a strategy or any tips on how I should approach second time preparation, like time allotment for revision solving? Well, you have to learn first, right? I mean, this idea of revision really is meant to revise, not to learn. So all learning starts with discovery. Your mind has to discover the knowledge first before you can review it. If you go to, well, you're on my YouTube channel now. If you click on playlists, you'll see a level 2 folder. And in there, I've done a whole bunch of videos on different ways to think about learning, different strategies, different ways to split your time between learning versus reviewing, when to review such that it has a certain decay rate. Like when you learn something, if you don't review it, it decays. But it's, well, how often do you review to make sure that it stays up? And usually it's, if you want to keep it where it is, if you do 15 minutes of review every 7 days, you can retain that knowledge over a long period of time. Review is not really a long period of time that you need. So I would say go look in that folder and you'll see a bunch of good videos that I've already done on that. What L2 reading is the most interesting in terms of new concepts, or perhaps the one that has the most applied in practice? Most applied in practice. I don't know. Because every time in my head I think of one, I go, no, but there's this one, there's that one, there's this one. It depends on what you're going to do. If you're going to be a fixed income analyst or an equity analyst, the two questions are very different. If you're going to be a macro top-down investor, then the question will be different there as well. Are you going to work for an institutional fund, or are you going to be your own, or are you going to head into the buy side, meaning that you want to be in the hedge fund side? Well, then you'll have different ones that are interesting. So where you're going, I think, says a lot about what would be more interesting. But as far as applied, the equity section, the models that you go through, and in fact, there's one, I think it's the last one in FRA, financial engineering, which walks you through a couple of examples of building spreadsheet models. I think that one is really good. You get the very basics of spreadsheet modeling out of that one. And I think there are, for all of the examples that you do have spreadsheets from the learning ecosystem that you do download and work with. So a lot of it is done for you, and then you work with those spreadsheets. That one's very applied. What should the key takeaways be from the reading videos? The learning objectives. Those are the key takeaways, the learning objectives. They're right at the very beginning of each reading. Would you also factor in topic exam weightings to the amount of time spent in each area? Not really. Not really. Reason is, as I explained before, you might have a section that's worth 15 marks, but there's 8 readings, and you might have another section that's worth 10 or 10% that only has 4 readings. So I don't know if the topic weight would matter to me that much. If I'm scoring about the group average in QMOC for a certain portion, does that imply enough practice to squeak by, or should I be aiming higher? Okay, from a larger perspective, how do you think I'm going to answer that? Should you be aiming to squeak by, or should you be aiming higher? It's a mindset, right? Always aim higher, always aim higher. Your goal is not to squeak by, but I get it. There is a certain reality to getting this done. I got to write this exam, and I wish I could aim higher all the time, but there's just a limit to how much time there is in the day. I got a job, I got a family, I got a significant other that demands some time. I got kids, I got this, I got baseball. I get it. There's a whole bunch in life. So sometimes you do have to trade things off, and you can't always aim higher because it's just a big waste of time. I shouldn't say a waste of time, but it requires a huge sacrifice of time. And how much of your life are you willing to sacrifice for something like this? There comes a point where, look, I'm starting to sacrifice the important things for this. So, mentally, you should always be thinking of aiming higher than anyone else around you, so that when you don't make it, you end up higher than anybody else. But if you're scoring the group average in the Q banks, the passing rate is less than average, is about all I can say. However, when you say Q banks, I'm not sure whose Q bank you're talking about, so I really don't know what to say on that. If you're talking about our level 2 Q bank, they are written harder, so that the average there actually, if you control for the level of difficulty, would be higher. What should be the way to utilize your content properly? First the reading video, then diving into a CUQ video, or start with the review video first and go for reading videos? Well, this is sort of in the last 10 years, it's been more, especially when you look at learning theory, it has become more of an open question. Is our textbooks written wrong? We have the learning up front, and you have all the questions at the end, such that you're learning without a question in your mind. You're learning without a problem to solve, and then you are introduced to the problems at the end. Shouldn't it be the other way around? Shouldn't you have all the questions at the front of the reading, so as you're reading them, you're not going to know the answers, but you are suddenly aware of the problems this reading can solve? That is an interesting debate. So if you're wondering about the relevance of a reading, maybe rather than starting on page 1, you start with the first question in the question section, and you read the types of questions there are. Then you at least know what knowing this reading is worth to you, because it can solve those types of questions. There is something to say about hitting the questions first, and with an understanding that, hey, listen, I'm probably not going to understand what's going on. But I'm going to be aware of the problems I will be able to solve once I learn it. So that knowing the problems I'll be able to solve, the content might mean more to me at that point. So here's a good example. I took a law course. Everybody has in business school, you always take that business law course. It's for the university I was at, it was required, but maybe it was an elective. And you start with the reading. And the reading always seemed to be, all of this if and if and if, because you had all of these potential arguments that you could use. And if somebody had some argument, you'd have some legal argument that could offset that. Or if they had some evidence, you'd have some rule about why that wasn't evidence or whatever. And it was, okay, this is complicated. I found that I did a lot better in that course. I think it was around chapter 6 or 7, where I said, you know what, never mind this. I'm going to start reading the questions at the back of the reading, because they're always assignments. So rather than going through the reading and learning it and then trying to fight my way through the questions, let me read the questions first. And then I'll start reading the reading. And I noticed that when I started reading the reading, oh, hang on, this is the answer to one of the questions. I was more alert to learning something, because I suddenly recognized that this can solve a problem I have. But when you're learning something with no problem in your head, as you learn it, you're thinking, but what problem can this solve of mine? And maybe it doesn't solve any problem, so you don't notice it, or it's not real. So there could be some benefit to starting from the end of chapter question first. But here's the thing that you can do, because, well, we're humans, we're strategic, we can experiment. Try it. So you know what? For this next reading, I'm going to the end of chapter question video first. No, do this. I'm going to do the review video first. They're 10, 15 minutes long. I'm probably not going to understand much. Then I'm going to go to the end of chapter questions, but because of the review, I'll get some of this stuff. Now I'll do the real learning, because now I can see, if I know this, I'll be able to solve all of those problems. And then once you do that, rewatch that end of chapter question video and say, yep, okay, I got all that. Because you would have remembered that was a problem when you read it. You'll be reading something, you go, oh, I remember this was a question. And then you'll be reading and you'll be able to find the answer in what you're reading, as opposed to reading it and then being tested on whether you know it. You have a question and now you're reading for the answer. Give it a try. Okay. CFA mock's harder than the real thing. I'm not really sure. Should I only memorize formulas the last 2 days? Yeah, I think if you're memorizing, memorization goes into short-term memory. Short-term memory has a very fast decay rate. So if you are memorizing, I would try to memorize as close to the event that you need it as possible. So maybe you have 3 days, the week before the exam, you take 3 days and you say, okay, this is ethics. I'm going to put as much of ethics into my short-term memory as possible. And the last 2 days, you go through your formulas. And the best way to memorize formulas is to write them out, is to actually write them out. And while you're writing them out, say them. Expected return equals the risk-free rate plus beta times the equity risk premium. The expected return equals the risk-free rate plus beta time, and just do it 10 times, move on to the next one. And that repetition, because now you're bringing a bunch of senses into it as well. You got tactile because you're writing it out. You've got visual because you're seeing it, and you're speaking it at the same time. The more senses you can bring into the learning process, the more likely you are to remember these things. Let's see. What is the best strategy answering questions in a timely manner? Slow down. I know it sounds ironic that, hang on, I said I want to answer it in a timely manner. You're telling me to slow down. Slow down. Because when you speed read, you're not helping yourself out at all. You will not run out of time on this exam because there are too many words to read. You won't. There are just enough words to read and enough time to think and answer the question in the time given. You don't need to speed read, because if you speed read, you're going to answer wrong. Slow down. Just slow down. Read the question first. Go back to what I just said a few minutes ago. Read the question first, then go and read. Until you find the answer it, then read the next question. Usually the questions are in order of the way the vignette is written. So it's not as if question 1 is near the end of the vignette, question 2 is near the beginning. It usually follows through like that. So read the question first and slow down in reading the question. What's the main word it's asking? Right? What are you expected to answer? Just read the question, then read. And the section where the answer is will become obvious based on the question, right? But slow down. Where are we here? What is the best? Okay, I did that. What is a good score for your mocks? Well, better than the group average. That's all I can say at that point. I don't know if there's a good absolute score, but look at your score. Look at the group. Are you scoring better than the group? Good. Work has been challenging to manage in conjunction with the curriculum. However, I have managed to make detailed notes on all sections. I have reviewed the content once. However, I have only managed QBank questions to date. 10 days left at this point. Do you suggest just formula repetition, mock exams, and corrections? Well, I think, when we start thinking about stuff like that, that's really just tying up some loose ends, right? You're just trying to memorize as many formulas as you can, make sure you don't slip up on that. If you feel comfortable with everything else, then yeah, you can tighten it up by trying to, doing all of that, getting all of that stuff in a short-term memory. But I don't know enough about you and what you know and what you don't know to suggest whether that would be enough at this point. Wondering what's the most efficient way of getting to level 2, assuming the videos in QBank is not enough here. I just passed level 1 with your material, wondering what's the most efficient way of getting to level 2, assuming the videos in QBank is not enough here. Why wouldn't they be enough? I don't, you're going to have to expand on that a little bit here. You're making an assumption that I don't agree with. Unless, of course, you're making a hypothetical assumption and you're saying, assume for a moment that it's just not going to be good enough. What could I do? That's a good question. I don't know. I would say demonstrate that it's not good enough first, and we'll deal with that. We'll deal with it at that point, because then I would have to ask what specifically is not getting you there. But I don't know that I would even accept that assumption. What do you benchmark? What do I benchmark? In terms of like my portfolio performance? I don't really have a benchmark, because I'm way too active and I use way too many derivatives to have a benchmark. I think that's what you're asking. I have not passed level 2 twice. I plan to sit in November 2023. God willing, please advise. Yeah, November is okay. If you haven't passed it twice, then there's something in the process that you might still be treating it as level 1, and you might still be with level 1. You can probably remember your way through a whole bunch of level 1. Less and less so as the years go by. I think that they're moving away from just testing you on your ability to recall something. And more on your ability to understand something. But level 2 requires you to go a little bit higher, that you may be given a situation that you have to evaluate first before determining what the appropriate valuation tool would be. So you might be given a situation where you have a stock displaying certain characteristics, and you have to do a valuation. You must first evaluate what valuation tool you would use based on the characteristics of that stock. So it's not a matter of oh, I remember this formula and I remember that formula. Now you have to say, well, wait a minute, though. Given these characteristics, I must first evaluate which valuation method is appropriate and then use that one to come up with the answer. So it does require you to elevate a little bit higher in terms of what it is that you are learning. Am I learning the words and the ability to repeat it? Or am I learning the concepts in such a way that I can carry on a discussion with somebody else about these things? Or am I learning it such that given a particular context, I know exactly how to apply something? I know which tool to apply. These are all different things and different ways to learn. As high as the higher the level you can get to, the better you are. Okay. I tried my best to prepare, but I'm sure that some questions will just be guessing. Can you recommend guessing strategy for level 2? My thinking is because it's random, that if I had to guess, I would guess the same thing all the time, A, B, or C. Because if it's random, at least I would get 1/3. If I can eliminate one of the options, let's say I'm going to guess B, I would guess B all the time unless I can eliminate B. It would make no difference to me if I could eliminate A because I was going to guess B. All it does is it makes my guess 50-50 at that point. But if I'm going to guess B, unless I can clearly eliminate B, I'm going to guess B. And if there are 10 questions I can't answer, on average, I'm going to get 3 or 4 of them right. And if I'm guessing, that's really all I'm trying to do. They're Hail Mary passes, right? You're saying, well, I'm just gonna guess. Some people would say, well, it doesn't really matter. A, B, or C, just guess wherever you want. Well, I don't know so much that is the same thing as being random, because when you read the answers and you're guessing on the answers, that becomes non-random now, because the wording of the answer will pull you towards one or another. And if you don't know what you're doing, and I really want to test you, I will write questions such that if you don't know what you're doing, these words will pull you towards the wrong one, thereby increasing your probability of getting it wrong. So that's why I would say if I don't know the answer to something, rather than allow the words to sway me, I will always answer B or A or C, whatever the case is, I'll always answer B unless I can eliminate B. And if I can eliminate B, I have a 50-50, which means if there are 10 questions and I know I can eliminate one option in each one, I'll get 5 out of the 10 guessing at random, as opposed to potentially trying to chase the answer around. The old topics fade away as I go ahead in the curriculum. Can you please suggest how to tackle this problem? Yes. Review. And it doesn't have to be long review. You can remember something with as little as 5 to 7 minutes of review. So you have the review PDFs. It is enough every so often to just read them. Sunday morning, you get up. It depends on what you do Sunday morning. I usually get up and I have my tea right away, and I usually review the news feed that day. But you would get up, you'd have your tea, and just cycle through page after page of review notes. Don't watch the review video, because sometimes when a video is playing, our mind starts walking away, and then we come back to the words. And then if you had to hit pause and repeat what you just heard the last minute, you wouldn't know. But when you're looking at the words and reading them, you have no choice but to look at them and read them. And first thing in the morning, your mind is nice and sharp. Your brain is firing fast. The neurons have their fastest speed. Read it over your tea. And if it takes 25 minutes to drink your tea, you can do a lot of review every Sunday morning for 25 minutes. And if you review every 7 days, you can avoid the decay that naturally comes with learning and then not using it. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be long review, as long as it's repetitive review. I've learned more than just finance from following this channel. I've gotten more intellectually curious because, well, that's what a teacher should do, right? A teacher is not the source of your answer. The teacher is the light that lights the way for you to find your own path. So if that's If that's how you feel, then that means that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. How different is level 2 as compared to level 1? What changes does one need to make in their strategies? Again, just Bloom's taxonomy of learning. If you go to YouTube and you type that in, there's a whole bunch of videos that explain the taxonomy and what it means for different levels of learning. Maybe take some time and be aware that we can learn things differently, that there is different levels of learning. And once you understand the different levels of learning, you say, okay, well, level 1 really targeted the first 3 levels. Level 2 moves up, and then level 3 moves even higher. If you don't make the move in level 2 to the higher level of learning, you might get past level 2, but then you have that huge jump to make at level 3 in the way that you learn. And that's where reality sets in, where it's like, I didn't elevate my learning. And by elevating your learning, it's not like you're not going from 70% to 100%. It's going from simple recall and understanding to evaluation. It's just a higher level of learning as opposed to the lower levels. You still may be scoring the same grade, but you're scoring it at a higher level of learning. So I would encourage you to get familiar with that. I'm a data scientist working in a multinational bank. I do not have any problem with the math-based topics like fixed and quant. Okay, but I find extremely boring and challenging to understand, study FRA and economics. Is there any tips on how to study these two topics? Well, you've got to make it real world. You've got to find a way to bring the real world into this. So for economics, for example, the currency one is easy, right? The regulation one, I'm with you, bloody boring. Who the hell? I mean, bloody boring. Some things you just have to put up with. It's boring. But the other one can be boring because it seems so model driven. And the idea of a model is that it's a simplification of reality, but it's a beautiful simplification of reality. And this is the problem, when you put that reading in the context, this is the problem that the advanced economies now face. They are nearing the steady state in terms of economic growth. We've had the big technological revolution, and technology has found its way into vehicles, into smartphones, computers, that we've had this jump in productivity because of that, but now we're hitting that steady state. Capital deepening isn't going to do it because our growth rates are slowing down. The capital to labor ratio really isn't going to help very much. I don't know that we can get much there. We have to get to a higher level, which means we need another round of innovation that raises that curve so we can get to a higher growth level. That's the problem we face today in the world, the developed world. You have to find a way to bring the reading to life by trying to say, what does this mean for the world that I'm in today? And when you start reading that reading in terms of, okay, we're in the steady state and we need to get out of the steady state. And if we don't, what implication does it have for equity markets? Because equity markets are very highly correlated to economic growth. And if we're in a steady state, we have low levels of economic growth, which means developed market equity markets are going to significantly underperform emerging market equity markets over the next 10 years, unless we can see a way to get from this curve to this curve such that we still have growth and that we're not in the steady state. Suddenly that reading is so much more relevant now because that's the world we live in right now. Try to find a way to bring it to life. FRA. So FRA. So you have let's see. The first one is intercorporate investments. You have multinational. Multinational. This is huge right now, right? When the U.S. dollar has been so strong this year in the last earnings seasons, the Q3 earnings through October, how many companies reported a hit to their earnings because of currencies, right? Well, that whole reading will explain why they would have a hit to their earnings because of a currency effect. That when one currency strengthens and they have businesses in different countries around the world, and those businesses are reporting in different currencies, when you have to consolidate, it's all in one currency. Well, all those currencies are weaker now. So when you convert those revenues, they're lower in terms of the domestic currency. There's the currency hit. Well, what does that mean? That reading explains what all of that. So once you know that reading, you could have known beforehand, before you even got to Q3, you could have looked at the direction of the DXY all year long. The S&P 500 components are American companies. You would have said there's going to be a hit to earnings because of the currency. However, if the DXY breaks, which we have seen it break last week, if it continues to break, that's going to be a tailwind for earnings going forward, which means it should boost earnings because that dollar is going down. The value of the other currencies are going up. So revenues in euros end up being worth that much more in US dollars when you convert. So you could think, well, what is my forecast for earnings going forward? They could be bullish for companies that have huge external exposure to other currencies if the DXY continues to drop. You have to bring it to life. The best way to bring it to life is you got to play this game. Even if you're a student, even if you're just a student, you got to play the game. It would be like learning how to swim from a textbook without getting in the water. It would be like learning how to play chess from a textbook without actually ever playing the game of chess with somebody else, and risking losing because you're still learning your strategy. There are just in the S&P 505 companies that report earnings every quarter. There's 2,000 quarterly reports a year, 2,000 earnings calls a year. There is no shortage of case studies to work with. Yeah, bring it to life. Take one company from every sector and create a portfolio and follow that. Say, okay, well, I'm going to buy a home builder. Who's it going to be? And I'm going to follow them. Just take one at random and just follow them. Read their quarterly report, and you'll find that there is so much in the quarterly report that you've learned in level 1 and level 2. You'll start saying, oh, I know this, I know that. And some of them will have pension obligations, and they'll start talking about their pension obligations and the sensitivity. And you'll say, I know that. Now that you're seeing it, you're actually seeing it, it makes you better at what you're learning. And if you got to sit in a job interview, you're now capable of talking about real world events in real time with somebody. And what is your view on this sector? Well, you've been following a company in that sector. You should know quite a bit about that sector. What's your view on that sector? It increases your probability of looking good in an interview. But here's what it comes down to is that you have to want to do it. Otherwise, it's just a big pain in the ass. You have to want to do it. Once you really know a company and you get insight into what drives that company, and you can tell based on where the economy is going, what data is coming out, how that company is going to perform. And when you see that you're consistently predicting the movement in that stock, I think this is going to be bullish for the stock. I think it'll be bearish. And when you see that it's actually working, because that's what you can get to. It's like having the keys to the castle. It's this insight that you get into this company that you know what its future is going to look like, most likely based on what you're seeing going on in the world today. So maybe a company is driven by certain key factors, like the level of, maybe there's a significant part of that company that is very reliant on the level of the 10-year and the level of the DXY. And most people wouldn't know it unless they really got to know that company. And when you get to know that company, you'll learn things about that industry, that sector, beyond what CFA can teach you, but it's reflexive. It works back on what you've learned and brings all of those topics to life. When you get the code to a company, when you break it, when you analyze a company so well and you've been with it for so long that you start to see how, things in the economy or movements and certain things that you say, this is going to be good. When you start to unlock things, you get so addicted to it. It's like, what's next? What's the next company? Because it really is like having the keys to the castle. The market is one big, giant money printing machine. But you have to know how to operate that machine. The CFA content will give you the rules to operate that machine, But at some point, you must operate that machine. You must actually play the game. So create a fake portfolio of 11 securities, one from each of the 11 sectors of the economy, and follow those 11 companies as if it were real. Play the game and see what happens. It's fun. I'm not saying throw real money at it, but by God, play the game. Where are we now? You have not mentioned FRA being difficult or easy, but at level 1, this section was the most important and extensive. What are your thoughts on FRA in level 1 versus level 2? Level 1 is very foundational. I think that you need level 1 to understand almost every single company because it is very foundational. Level 2 is very specific. So, for example, the first reading on intercorporate investment and the types of securities that you would hold, I think it'd be very difficult to understand a company whose assets are primarily financial securities without understanding that reading or having a good understanding of that reading and the difference between amortized cost versus fair value to P&L and understand what it means for the volatility of earnings. And if you do have fair value to P&L from a company that is dominated by financial assets, right away, you know that any metric of net income is going to be useless. It helps you understand that, such that you need some other measure of operating performance rather than net income, because there's going to be way too much volatility in net income purely for changes in interest rates, because changes in interest rates will change the value of the assets up and down. Even if the assets are held for a long time and has a cash flow, that's going to be drowned out by the change in this. Well, that reading helps you understand that. But that's very specific. If you get to a company like GM, for example, who cares? Intercorporate investments are almost meaningless. But GM does have a ownership in a Chinese joint venture. Well, what percentage of it? How does it count for it? It's less than 50%, so we know it's not consolidated. It is accounted for by a separate line item. Well, you would know that. So when you look at GM, say, okay, well, this is what I expected to see. I know what this means. And then some companies, like a Home Depot, for example, which is reporting earnings this coming week, that reading is probably meaningless for Home Depot altogether. Same with the reading on understanding financial institutions, meaningless for Home Depot, because Home Depot is primarily North American and primarily US dollar exposed. Primarily, the reading on international operations is probably meaningless for that one as well. Whereas almost every reading at level 1 FRA would apply to almost every company you look at. So level 2 is a little bit more specialized by the type of operations or the type of business that you would be looking at. Little more challenging than level 1, but not so much. I think it's much more challenging if you have no accounting background. But I think if you have a business degree, you've taken at least 2 accounting classes, if not 4. Should the relative easiness of a topic, relative enjoyment, and how well you score indicate where you should seek a career in finance? Well, I would say the relative enjoyment of the topic would, if you, for instance, level 3 has a large section on private wealth management. Not my thing. I mean, it's not about asset management or portfolio management at that point. It's about managing the individual. It's about managing your relationship with the individual. A lot of work on developing the IPS and building the relationship. But if you're a wealth manager, you're probably not running asset allocation strategies and you're probably not managing money, but you are determining which managers you would send money to, what allocations we would have, that sort of thing. You are meeting the client, you're learning about the client, you're going through the assessment of their risk tolerance, you're helping them define their goals in the IP. like, for me, that sounds really, really boring as a career. But I'm a numbers person. I need numbers. I need that. Whereas for other people with numbers, they may look at it and they go, oh, that sounds really, really boring as a career. We're all different. That's the point. It's not a value judgment. It's just for myself. I'm not turned on by that. So I would use that as a guide and say, well, if I'm not turned on by it, I certainly don't want to do it for a living. Now, I know some people who are really good at it because they're people persons. People persons. They're people. They really shine when dealing with people. That's their strength, is understanding people and being around people and building relationships and all of that sort of thing. Well, great. And they do quite well, but that's what they love doing. That's their thing. They don't want to get involved in optimizing an asset allocation and doing a 10-year forecast on a stock and coming up with a target price. To them, that's torture. So yeah, I would say that if there's something that you really enjoy, that's probably a light. That's probably something saying, hey, psst, over here. But understand there's an economic reality to life, that sometimes what you enjoy may not actually have any economic value. Well, in which case you have to make a decision. So as long as it has some economic value and it can give you the kind of life that you want, then yeah, follow your enjoyment. Can you provide discount for students from India if they have also taken scholarship from CFA? Well, I don't own the business anymore. And we have always, I will say this, our philosophy in our pricing has always been to be extremely accessible. That when you compare what we offer and what you get versus what others provide for 1,000, 1,500, sometimes 2,000, we are already significantly discounted. So it would be rare, I think, that we would discount from where we are. Also, you may not need all 10 sections. You may only need help in 2 or 3 sections. Well, you can buy a section for, I don't know what it is now, $36. You buy a section for $36, $35 US. That's fairly cheap for a whole section. You get every video, and a chapter question video, every review video, and the question bank for that section. That's a lot. And then if you decide to buy the whole thing after you buy the section, the whole package is reduced by every penny you paid for the section. So I would say at this point, we are so significantly discounted. I'm wondering from your view, how Owen's career prospects with CPA and CFA? I don't know. I don't know much about CPA and where it goes. I know there are more CPAs than CFAs, but I think CPAs and the CFA are on 2 different sides of the statements, right? The CPAs are very involved in constructing the statements, whereas the CFAs are more involved in deconstructing the statements to figure out what they mean. So a CPA bakes the apple pie. The CFA determines whether or not it's going to taste good. I don't know that those 2 things help each other. I think it's one or the other. But I would say this. Being a CFA and reading statements would be a lot easier with a CPA because you will understand some of the transactions that occurred to create that entry. I will have done 8 full mock exams by the end of this weekend. Do you think I should keep finding more mocks or do something else over the next 2 weeks? I think there's a limit to mock exams. I think after a certain number, I don't know that they help you very much. We have found on our site that the average score, when you do the first exam, the second, the third, the average score increases at level 2. But when you do the fourth, there's really no change. That there's the incremental improvement after 4 isn't really there. That wouldn't that time be spent doing something else? A good strategy would be to answer other people's questions. Under every video we have, there's a whole bunch of questions. If you really know that reading, you should be able to check. Well, there's an exam right there. Is take a particular reading and just go through the comments and answer. We pulled back on answering a lot of questions specifically to leave them for other people to answer, because it is a valuable learning tool. How representative would you say level 2 mocks are of the actual exam? We don't know. If CFAI gave us their exams each year so that we could benchmark how ours versus theirs, we would have some kind of number for that. But anything I tell you would be a guess. Any provider, if they say our exams are as close to the real exams as possible, is just making stuff up. There's no way that they can know that. I was supposed to take a level 2 exam in 2022, paid for your level 2 resource, but I deferred to 2023. Do I still have access to your resources? Use if you paid for 2022. I'm not sure. There's something there, but use the contact us on the website, and somebody will take care of that. How much time should we give to finishing the course for L2? I think if you have a good plan, a good study plan, and you have 4.5 to 5 months, you should get through it. If you have a good process and you work the process and you're honest to the process, you should get through it. After finishing all readings, what's the best way to review everything? I will save a month to do a full review of the topics. How I can have efficient review. To have efficient review, stay true to the word review. Review is review. In other words, don't try to read the reading all over again and do the videos all over again. You're in review. You review until it is clear to you that you don't know something. But if you're reviewing and the reviewing is going fine, I wouldn't waste a lot of time reviewing with a fine-tooth comb. If you're reviewing and you're doing well on the review, good. If you're reviewing and you say, well, I just don't get this. Well, then do a deeper dive on that reading. Take a couple of days and get that reading out of the way and move on. I am studying and working. Can't find time to do stock picking, personal finance. Should I be ashamed putting my 401k in the Vanguard target date funds? No. You don't have time. We all have to prioritize. And there are times where you have to let some things go, where you say, look, what's important to me right now? There'll be plenty of time to do what you want to do. But if there's no time to do any particular stock picking at this point in time, don't be a hero. There's nothing wrong with putting it in the fund. Nothing wrong at all. Feels silly not using any of my new finance skills to better my own finance. Yeah, you could say that. You could say, well, I've done all of this and I don't seem to be doing it for myself. But listen, I manage some of my money, but a significant part of it is with a wealth management firm. Only because you need some strategy that is not as aggressive and active as I'm doing. So I don't manage 100% of my own money. Probably only about a third of it. The other 2/3 are in someone else's hands. I'm aware of my allocation. I'm aware of what I'm holding, but I'm not calling the shots. I'm not making decisions or anything like that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. How much time should we give finishing? Okay, I already did that. Did that. I've been doing mostly the Q banks. Done about 1K of those. Average 80%. That's good. Mocks are 65 to 70%. Would you recommend just keep hitting the? Yeah, if you're getting in that range, I would continue on. You're averaging 80% in the Q banks. Mocks are written harder, and the thing about mocks is that they're not repetitive enough for you to get a lot of practice in any one section. Like when you're doing a Q bank and you're doing 30 questions from multiple regression. Well, you're seeing 30 questions from multiple regression again and again and again and again. But on a mock exam, maybe you will, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll only get one question. So the mock exams are broader, and you don't have that repetition within a topic where you can get into a flow. Will you be taking a session for level 1 anytime soon? A session like this? Well, probably next Saturday. I've done level 3. This is level 2. It's Lots of people are showing up. There are a lot of good questions, which means people are getting value out of it. So I'll do it as long as there's value. I mean, if only 5 people show up, then I think, well, may as well just have a Zoom meeting with 5 people if it's going to be 5 people, right? But yeah, I'd say next Saturday at 2, I'll do a level 1. Sure, why not? There's a perception that your mocks are way harder than the average exam difficulty. Would you agree? I agree. And they're supposed to be. What would be the point of making them easy? What would be the point of you doing some mock exams and after reviewing your answers, you walk away from the exam learning nothing new? In other words, it didn't improve you in any way. What would be the point? Mock exams are safe. If you're going to have a bad score, have them on a mock exam. They're the safe place to have them. They uncover your weaknesses on purpose. They're meant to uncover your weaknesses. But I mean, I could write them easy so that you feel really good about yourself, scoring 90, 95%, but that's not my job. If you want to feel good about yourself, call your mom. This is meant to push you. It's meant to give you a little bit of stress so that you lean into it a little bit more, not to make you relax and sit back. So I use the analogy of training for a fight. If you've ever done any boxing, when you're training for a fight, you don't train with people from your weight class. You'll train with somebody that is in the weight class above you because they're heavier. And they'll lean on you and they'll push you into the ropes, and you have to keep pushing them off you and pushing them off you. Well, nothing will weaken your shoulders like that. So by the time you get to the 3rd round, that person leaning on you on the ropes, your shoulders are dropping, your hands are down, you're an easy target. But if you can handle yourself with somebody 20 pounds heavier, when you get into the ring with the person your size, that strategy of leaning you on the ropes and forcing you to push them off all the time to wear out your shoulders isn't going to work, because you've been pushing a guy 20 pounds heavier off you for round after round after round. This guy's your weight. You're not going to fall into that trap, and you're not going to be worn out by that. So it's the same thing. It's you're fighting with somebody that's just 20 pounds heavier than you when you write these mocks, but it should make you better. As I approach new topics, the old ones fade away. Already talked about that. Historically, what percentage of students pass level 2? Trying to compare my mock exam scores to the average. So that's we used to have a better answer for that, but since the scores have been so low these last couple of years, it's hard to tell. We used to have something called a 1 fee to completion package, which means you paid 1 fee and level 1, level 2, level 3. Or if you bought it at level 2, it covered level 2 and level 3 for as many times as you needed it. And what we found was, and we sold a lot of these, what we found was only about 7% used it, used the repeat, which means that we were selling something that only 7% would use, because it was cheaper to pay for level 1, level 2, and level 3 than to buy the 1 fee to completion. The 1 fee to completion cost more because it had the implied insurance premium in there for as many times as you needed it. So we were basically overcharging 93% of our candidates because only 7% used it. So we decided to move away from that and go to a 1 fee to pass per level, which means you pay for level 1 only once and you get it until you pass. So we can tell our pass rate by our failure rate. And our failure rate is those who opt to extend to the next exam date. But there's a bit of a catch in there lately, and this only happened in the last year, I think. CFAI has now made it possible for you to defer to the next exam for a small fee. You can do that once. So we get a bunch of that going in there. So now when we look at how many people have used it, we have to say, well, now hang on a second. How many used it because of a deferral? They willingly deferred to the next exam. And how many people used it because of the 1 fee to pass? And we haven't torn that apart yet. But previous to that, I think our lowest pass rate came in the pandemic when all pass rates were really low. I think we had a 77 or 78% pass rate. We've never had a pass rate as low as the industry. If we did, there's no way that we could offer a 1 fee to pass at the prices we charge. Let's say that we had the same pass rate as the industry. What was the last one? 39% for level 2. I think it was 39%. So let's say, well, maybe let's call it 40% for level 2, which means 60% failed. Let's say that we had 60% failing and that we had to carry 60% of our subscribers. And we have thousands. We don't just have hundreds. We have thousands of subscribers. We're the second largest in the world. If we had to carry 60% of our candidates for free to each exam, there's no way we could do it for, what is it, $350 we charge now for level 2. Kaplan charges $1,500. Wiley is $900 to $1,000. There are some other providers that are $750, $800, $1,000, $1,500. So if we had pass rates like the industry average, we would have to charge those rates because we'd be out of business in no time, because we don't use a value pricing model. We use a cost plus model. So value pricing is, I figure out how much value you get from me and I charge you for it. That's Apple. Apple uses a value pricing system. This is the value you get from our iPhone. You're going to pay $1,500. It doesn't cost them $1,500 to make the bloody thing, I'll tell you that. It's just they think you get that much value out of it. So there are some providers who will price their product based on a value system. This is the value you derive from it based on our assumptions of value. That's what you'll pay. We use a cost plus pricing system, meaning here's what it's going to cost us to deliver. And here's how many candidates we think we're going to get. So let's divide our cost by the number of candidates. That's our cost per candidate. And let's mark it up so that we stay in business. In the markup is an assumption about how many times we have to repeat candidates. And if we have to repeat 60%, notice we'd have to go higher in our price. There's no possible way that we could sell at this price if we had industry pass rates. So, to assess whether or not our pass rates are higher, you can look at what you get for what we charge. We have also now, as of 2023 packages, included our 1 fee to pass for candidates who are registered for an exam, but just don't choose to write. Previous, you had to at least write the exam. I mean, it's not our fault if you don't write it. We did our job. Now we say, well, let's get rid of all of that. Now you don't even have to write it. And we know that 15% typically don't write. So right away, we know there's 15%, even of 100% who write pass, there's 15% that are going to repeat. On top of a fail rate, there's no possible way that we can maintain these prices if our pass rate were as low as the industry average. You could just use an economic argument to get to that point. Okay, where are we here? Okay, lots of questions. I'm trying to get to them all, but every time somebody asks a question, if I don't keep my finger on my mouse to keep the thing in place, I lose my place. So let me just give me a second so I can find where I was. I don't want to miss anybody's question. Wow. Okay, here we are. Okay, there it is. With single regression removed from level 2, yeah, that's been brought down to level 1 now. Do your videos still include learning of single regression to help build an understanding of multi-regression? For 2023, at this point in time, you should have already seen a single regression at level 1. I don't know that level 2 would have it. I don't know that it would have it still. If it is dropped from the level 2 curriculum, then it's dropped. Then we would follow suit with that. If it's there for you to review, we would follow suit with that. That's about the best I can say there. If at some point level 1 regression or a simple linear regression becomes what's called a prerequisite for level 2, and it is just offered on the CFA site at level 2 as a prerequisite reading, like some of the economics readings at level 1, we would do that as well. You said level 1's passing score is high. How much is it in your opinion? Level 1 passing score is high. I don't know if I said level 1 passing score is high. Our passing score at all 3 levels is high, with level 3 being the highest. Level 1, we have the lowest passing score at level 1 of all our passing rates, but still way higher, more than double what the industry is. Like when I say industry, what the pass rate is. I know we are. We can prove it. I mean, we're not just saying this stuff that if somebody out there says, I'm calling you on that, we can prove it. Retaking level 2 in November. Should I keep in touch with the material as from now, or just start next year on April, May? How would you recommend keeping in touch with the material? You don't have to keep in touch with the material if you're writing all the way in November. That's a whole year away. That's a long time to be with it. But you should keep in touch with the market. So every Sunday I put a video out, hour and a half long, is a market outlook for the week. And it's mostly applied stuff from the 3 levels of CFA. Keep in touch with the market, that when you get to level 2, the stuff you learn has so much more life to it. And then if you are writing in November, I would start thinking sometime in April that, late March, early April is where you want to start at least putting some footprints down. One CFA charter holders, what areas would you recommend we study further or new studies to undertake to complement the knowledge and skills acquired through CFA journey? At this point, I would say, don't worry about adding more letters to your name once you get to this point. Worry about adding years to your experience. And your experience and what you do will tell you what will lead you somewhere where you will say, well, now I want to know more about this or more about that. For the most part, the real world could probably teach you everything you need to know. You're getting the 3 letters to prove to the market that you are of a certain quality. Once you prove that you're of a certain quality, you don't have to keep proving again and again and again that you're of a certain quality, right? What about pricing and valuation of forwards? Not really sure what that question follows up from, but pricing and valuation of forwards is time value of money. I'd like to know getting more prep providers helping and learning for CFA in general, just focusing on one. Well, you have limited time, right? And this is the decision we've always made here is, how do we add more value? Well, we can always create more content, but we already have enough content and you only have so much time. There's no possible way you can get through all that content. So if you have 2 or 3 providers, you'll never get through all the content. So you're paying for extra stuff you'll never use. So we focus more on what other things can we add other than just adding more stuff, so that we can add value. Start with one. And if you find that it's just, you still have a bunch of questions where you're saying, I'm just not getting it, well, then switch to another one. What's your best stock pick right now? Best stock pick. I don't know. I don't have a best. All the bests really paid off last week. The mortgage REITs, the home builders, the mining stocks. Those, in my opinion, were good places to be. I'd say your best stock pick is finding a place where nobody else wants to be that is going to have value. Is it worth spending time on the subjective? I already got that one. Post it again here. You always suggested to focus on just understanding instead of making notes. That's why I did for level 1. Well, there's focus and then there's paying attention. Like, you pay attention to it, but the word focus to me seems like you're going deeper. That's what focus is, but I wouldn't skip them. I'd pay attention to them. I'd read them, but I wouldn't obsess over them. I took level 121, but I had to take a break. Should I revise level 1 first or dive into level 2? Dive into level 2 and review opportunistically. Review where you need it. If one has the time, do you recommend a sequence of reading the CFA materials, complete questions, and watch your summary videos? Yeah, if you have time, read. Absolutely, I would recommend that. Do a slow reading. I read things twice. Whenever I get to a reading, I always read it once without even trying to understand it. If I understand it as I read it, great. If not, I'm just reading it. I'm just reading it just to get an idea of what I'm going to see. Then I read it. So my first pass might be 15, 20 minutes. I'm not reading every word. I'm going to each section. I'm reading quickly. I'm not reading for understanding. I'm just getting an idea of the lay of the land. That's it. And then I start reading, and I find that my second pass would have gone a lot faster than a first pass if I tried to learn everything as I read it. Will you take a session? Okay, did that. Do you recommend making notes for specific treatments in FSA? If it helps you, yes, absolutely. Failed level 2 in November and took a long break. I have registered for May. There are some changes in curriculum, and I have also forgotten a lot of the stuff, how to approach the exam. As I said a couple of times, just jump right in. Find a section, jump right in. What about pricing and valuation forward suggestion? I'm getting my head around that reading. Look at the seminar I did in that section, which is pricing a bond, an interest rate futures contract. Well, I think it's structured as a forward. I do it 3 ways. I do it using nothing but time value of money. I do it with a formula, and I do it. I solve it 3 ways to show that that you'll get the same answer no matter how you do it. If you think about just draw a timeline and start putting where all the dollars and money are on the timeline, and understand one rule. If you're comparing something, you have to move all of the money to the same point in the timeline, no matter where you put it. So when you're valuing, you have a forward price, which is way at the end of the timeline. You have a price today. You must either bring that price to the end of the timeline, compare the two, then bring that profit back to this point in time, or take this forward price and discount it to today and compare the two prices. It's all time value of money. What's the most efficient way of using your material for level 2? I think I've answered that. How to conquer ethics. It's a memorization game. Ethics is, for me, it's memorization, because again, it seems it's so subjectively put together. Would you recommend video, then read chapter, or first read? Try them both ways. Don't ask for my recommendation, because it may not work for you. Take a reading, do the videos first, and then read. Then take another reading and read first, then do the videos, and ask and figure out, well, which one flowed better? Which one felt better? Which one do I feel better about? And discover it on your own. Experiment. Could you add a video review for the 3 readings on real estate? They are short, but altogether do some more than 2 hours. There should be, I think that change. Here's the thing. It used to just be one long reading, and then it broke down into 3, so that the review video that I had done for the 1 should be up for the 3. What should be the strategy for the last 10 days? So these are okay. So the questions are repeating again, and I probably have already answered, because I'm midway through the question. So I'm going to scroll down to the very end of the questions now, and I'm going to work my way back up, because there's a lot. So let's get to the newer questions first. Free virtual girls chat here. Oh, come on, man. Really? Is that your life? If you're online right now, is this really all you got as a human being? Is this really the best you got? Is stuff like that? You have to troll different chat things to get somebody to click on a link. It's just, change your last name, because you're embarrassing your parents. If that's really the best you got, man, my God, I didn't expect to see that in this kind of chat, but these guys are everywhere. Well, hey, I'm being sexist by saying these guys, these people, because it doesn't have to be a guy, right? Let's see. Why CFA syllabus isn't so practical? Oh, but it is. If you don't find that it's practical, it's probably because you just don't know how to apply it. So you do have an applied folder when you subscribe for level 1 or 2. I have an applied series, which is a separate subscription, but there is some videos I did called the applied series. Go through those, and you'll see that I apply from the readings. I apply them directly in the market. That stuff applies. So, the time series and mean reverting levels, I did a video showing how you can use that for the live cattle, live hogs futures market, using regression, time series regression to use the 2-year yield as a predictor for the future federal funds rate. I showed you how to do that. How to create a synthetic on a dividend-paying stock to turn a capital gain into a dividend into a capital gain and avoid any currency exposure. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff there that I did that's applied. Do you think it's possible to study 8 hours a day and actually retain information, or is there a limit to information? Yeah, 8 hours a day is a lot. 8 hours a day is a lot, but you got to break it up. 45 minutes, take a break. Switch topics, 45 minutes, take a break, go back to the first topic. 45, take a break, go back to the second topic. So if you have distributed learning where you have 2 topics that you're visiting each time, and you're 45 minutes in, 45 minutes out, I think that's a good mix. If you can get in 4 to 5 hours a day of good studying that way, I think that's really good. This is my opinion. You 100% can study 8 hours a day with retention, take breaks. Oh, somebody already answered it. There you go. What do you recommend studying 2 weeks before the exam, or methodology to approach the exam? Well, you're not studying 2 weeks before an exam. You're consolidating at that point. Your goal is to consolidate your knowledge. You're not really, you're probably learning very little new stuff, but just learning how everything you know fits together. And when you start consolidating that knowledge, a lot of it tightens up nicely for you. So the review period is not so much to learn as it is to consolidate everything you have known and tighten it up. What is the new curriculum update for level 2 about spreadsheets? Do we have to be using Excel? No, you don't have to use Excel in the real exam. It is just part of the learning process that you go through, because you will use it in the real world. So if you want this to be more applied, this is a method to make it more applied, but in making it more applied, it doesn't mean that you'll be graded on that. Level 1 quant has Python and R code in it now, spread throughout, but you're not tested on that. But it does have that, but you're not tested. It's just saying, hey, if you wanted to know this stuff, here it is. Don't say we're not applied. Here you go. We're just not going to test you on this. Okay, so I see something here with question marks again and again. I took the last week off my job. What should I do in the last 10 days? Well, listen, you have all been through university, right? And you've all crammed for exams. And for when you cram for final exams, you usually have 3 to 5 exams that are 3 hours each. You have 15 hours of exams at the end of the semester, and you're cramming how much to get that done. And you've gotten through that. This is no different. Each section is like half a semester. So in essence, a level 2 exam is the same as a full semester of 5 classes. And you've crammed for those 3-hour exams before. This is the same thing. So think about all the university exams you wrote and what you did for that. This is no different. Just because this is self-study, just because there was no professor, just because there were no midterms and assignments and things that were delivered along the way, does not mean that preparing for a test of your knowledge is any different. You already know how to do this. There is no secret because it's different. It's the same thing, even though this wasn't in a university classroom. This is university level knowledge that you're learning. Same thing. Whatever worked for you there, whatever strategy you found was the best for you to perform in the exams that you had, you do the same thing. Imagine that you're cramming for 5 big exams. Level 2 candidate, considering to do masters next year. Which majors do you recommend me studying? You can't ask me what you should study. You have to ask yourself what you should study. Control your own destiny, or somebody will control it for you. What do you want to do? What are you interested in? What turns you on? Don't take something just because you think it's more marketable. Take something that turns you on. Take something that excites you. Because if it excites you, you will then be more marketable in that particular field. If I buy the applied series, will it help me to prepare for level 3 as I am setting for level 2 in 10 days and I want to take a small break? The options course will help you with the 2 options reading at level 3. The top-down analysis, we've already gone through the slowdown phase and the importance of the VIX. Top-down is you're starting at the economy and you're working your way down to sectors, and that's as far as you go. The bottom-up probably won't help very much. The bottom-up is company analysis. So the first one is already up, and it's agency. It's 3.5 hours. A really deep dive into how agency makes money. Agency is a mortgage REIT. How they make money and what we think their prospects will be based on what risk drivers drive their returns. And then you write up an investment thesis and you go through the investor presentation and the 10Q. The next one in there is going to be DHI, which is DR Horton, one of the home builders, which is doing fantastic. They got a mini REIT building on their balance sheet, which I think is a great idea. So we're going to go through that one. Then it'll be followed up by ABR, which is another mortgage REIT, but they're a servicer, an originator and a servicer, which is very different than holding financial assets, which is what agency does. It simply holds financial assets and it levers up. ABR doesn't do that. So in that folder over the next 3 years will be some 150 companies from all the different sectors of the economy. So it doesn't just help with level 3, but it helps with your career. The options will help you at level 3. The top down will help you with capital market expectations, especially the section where you have to identify the phase of the business cycle you're in. The yields and spreads video, which should be up next week in the top down, will help you set capital market expectations for expectations of where the yield curve is going to be and expectations where corporate spreads are going to be and spreads on different credit securities. That might help you in fixed income, the fourth reading in fixed income. So it's not that there is no intersection set between the two. That's probably a good way to say it. There is an intersection set. It's a matter of how big that intersection is for you. Let's see. Somebody asked about mock exams. QBank still have some items that I forget. Any tips? I scored between mid-50s. Yeah, so I'll bundle all these questions in about any tips for the last 10 days is, so you've been through the cramming season for end of semester exams. You know what that's about. That's what this is. Lean into it. It's just a matter of you got 10 days to go. You don't want to write level 2 again. Just keep saying that to yourself. I don't want this to be the second last time I write level 2. This is the last time I write level 2. And every time you think, well, I'm just going to watch this movie or I'm going to watch an hour of TV, you can watch it later. It's all streaming now. It's not as if, oh, I missed it this week. It's all streaming. You don't miss anything anymore. So just lean into this. Get rid of everything else and just lean in and do the best you possibly can on this. That should take care of those questions. What's your suggestion in remembering formulas? Write them out. Write them out as you repeat them. Just write them out 10 times. Each formula 10 times. Taking attempt number 2, I struggled with the whiteboard scratch paper. Yeah. Marker was thick and smudges while writing caused unnecessary. Yeah, I don't know what recommendation to give to that. That is just part of the structure of the process or the experience that you have. So, not sure what I can say on that one. How many mock exams minimum do you recommend to take? I don't think I have a number. No, I don't think I have a number. It's whatever you feel comfortable with. If you're not If you are not young and love markets and started to do it only now, is it possible to find a job in industry or just the only way to use knowledge for personal use? Well, when you say you're not young, I mean, I don't know what not young means. If I put on LinkedIn that I was available for a job, uh, I'd have, I don't know how many offers by tomorrow. Uh, and I'm not young. Well, biologically, relative to the average age group taking the exam, I'm not young, but mentally, I'm very much a child. So, it depends on how you look at your age. But no, I don't know. I don't know that I would let that bother me. It's. Are you comfortable with it? Are you comfortable with your age? And if you're not, well, I mean, I don't know what to say there. Let's see. Real estate review, 3 sections isn't there for level 2. Well, I'll look into that. Having a good, strong accounting background is level 1 manageable for February, starting now. Well, an accounting background might only help you with the FRA section, the financial reporting and analysis section. I don't know that it would help you very much with fixed income, with derivatives, with alternative investments, with portfolio management, with economics, with corporate finance, maybe a little bit with equity, but I don't really know. So having, it's like saying, I got a background in statistics, level 2 will be easy. Well, no, 2 readings will be easy. two of the readings will be easy, but it's not going to, statistics isn't going to help you understand the Cobb-Douglas model in economics. Okay, let's see. Should we assume betas are not standardized when answering these questions? Answered using RF rate as intercept and formula for expected return. I thought the intercept for fundamental factor model have no meaning when betas are standardized. I'm not answering content questions, so I'll pass on that. When doing simple time series analysis models on SPY, what time frame do you prefer? It's hard to say. Depends on what I'm trying to get done. Also, I don't know what time series I'm using on SPY. Am I trying to find like a time series on an SPY? What am I trying to find there? Am I trying to find a trend? If I'm trying to find a trend, that's overkill for finding a trend. I'd probably do better finding a trend in the growth rate as opposed to finding a trend in the price. So it depends on what I'm doing in the time series. And it depends on, am I looking for a mean reverting level? Is it SPY against some other time series, and I'm just looking for a correlation between the two or some mean reverting spread between the two, then I'd probably use a longer time frame. There is no one answer for that. It's tell me what I'm trying to get done, and I'll tell you what time frame makes sense. Thoughts on FTX, end of crypto? Well, end of that guy, that's for sure. Using client money. Any beginner in the finance industry will tell you that is an absolute no-no. Using client money for other purposes, you can't touch that shit. And he did. So jail time there at least. That's a big no. It's the end of him. It just seems to me that crypto is just like every time you turn around, there's another failure, there's another fraud, there's some clients that lose their money, there's another company that's freezing client withdrawals. I think it's what BlockFi is now frozen any client withdrawals. And it's just like, there's the risk of the asset. That's one thing. But when you have the risk of the market participants who are dealing with the asset, that's a whole other thing altogether. So you're going into this market where it's like, well, okay, the asset's risky, but by God, the players are just as risky as well. How do I know who to trust, for God's sake? And every time you get these spam messages in your comment sections in YouTube, it's always Bitcoin scammers or crypto scammers. It's never a PayPal scammer. It's always a crypto scammer. Like, it just seems to me that on both sides of the transaction, I got fraudsters, scammers, and criminals. What value does it have on its own? Crypto to me seems like one big, huge, giant gift to criminals. That's it. I honestly don't see the allure of it. And for those who have lost money in it, my feeling is, well, what did you think? Serves you. It serves you right. You deserve to lose money if you went into this thinking that, oh, it's going to be this and it's going to be that. Like, think it through, for God's sake. Every argument I've heard for crypto can be defeated on the face of it. There's a limited amount. There's only 21 million. It's scarce. That's why it has value. I'm scarce. There's only one of me. I must be worth billions then, because there's only one of me. So I must be worth a hell of a lot of money. What if I make something and I only make one of it? What if I draw a picture and I only make one of it? It's scarce. It must be worth billions of dollars, right? Well, somebody would say, well, yeah, there's one of you, but there are lots of other humans. Yeah, but there are lots of other crypto coins. There's not just Bitcoin. There's an unlimited number of these limited coins. So this argument of scarcity fails on the face of it. Well, you can send money to somebody else, no questions asked. Well, who's asking questions? I can send money to anybody I want through PayPal. PayPal doesn't stop and say, hold on there, fella. Where'd you get this money? Where's this money going? Why are you paying this? I don't have to answer a list of questions. I simply just do it. I go to the bank and I say, I want to wire money into this bank account over here. They do it. They don't put me in a room and grill me and call in the police and say, what are you doing? Where'd you get the money? There's no questions asked. Who has questions asked? It seems to me like the silliest thing. Oh, no questions asked. Yeah, but same with everywhere. There's no questions asked. So the scarcity argument fails. The no questions asked argument fails. Almost every argument they come up with for why you want to use crypto, something else is just as good. So I'm not getting this whole thing about why you'd want to, why would I want to be in Bitcoin when all of the features of Bitcoin are really not features at all. Sure, no questions asked, but PayPal doesn't ask me questions. Sure, it's scarce, but so am I, right? I mean, I can create something scarce, doesn't mean it has value. So I think it's long past due that this industry goes away. I don't see anything in crypto. Blockchain technology is a different thing. I do see a lot of value there, but this idea of crypto coins, get rid of them. I mean, really, it would definitely clean up the comment section under my videos, and I wouldn't have to work so hard to delete all the crypto scammers, My God. But then again, how many crypto scammers would be unemployed? What would they do? They'd have to go steal something somewhere else. So maybe that there's a whole bunch of other fraud that's being eliminated because all the fraudsters are in crypto. Maybe that has its value right there, that, listen, you're going to have fraudsters in the economy anyways. May as well at least know where they are. Yeah, you could look at it that way. Okay, I think that we're done here. You're a PhD at CFA. Did you get any extra flavor from CFA that PhD did not give you? Oh, no, I don't have a CFA. I'm a PhD. A CFA with a PhD is redundant. At some point, you're just bragging. When you put it this way, there would be no incremental benefit having 3 more letters behind my name when you already have a terminal degree. Once you have that, that's it. You should be done with any of those sorts of things. But the question you're saying, did you get any extra? Is there anything extra that the CFA has that PhD didn't? Well, here's the thing. A PhD is not an applied degree. It is a philosophy degree. It is about the philosophy of knowledge. So what you're doing in a PhD is you're trying to understand what knowledge is. So you have some kind of assumption, some kind of ontological assumption that, hey, there's some knowledge that exists. And then you have some method that you're going to use to try to get at that knowledge. You're going to try to discover what that knowledge happens to be. Well, you have to have some theory about, well, what is knowledge to begin with? If you have this ontological assumption that some knowledge exists, you must have some theory about what that knowledge is. So it's a lot of that. And then it's a lot of methods of ways to discover that knowledge. It is not more of an MBA. It is a completely different degree. But what it does is you're not learning new knowledge at that point. You're creating knowledge, which means you must understand the structure of knowledge. And in understanding the structure of knowledge, only then can you truly teach it, because now you're not seeing the knowledge on the page, but you're seeing through the knowledge, and you're kind of looking at it from behind, because you see the structure on how that knowledge is built. You see the architecture of it. Now you can teach it with simplicity. You understand something so well that it becomes so simple to you that's what makes a good teacher, is when you can teach the simplicity in the complexity. CFA, on the other hand, is very applied. It's not theoretical in the sense. Now, you do come across theoretical models, and there is some theory in there, because you have to have some kind of economic theory. There is no real one decided way the economy works. There's different theoretical models. There's no one decided way on the causes of inflation or the cures for inflation. There are different theoretical lenses that you can use. But for the most part, CFA is either methods-based or applied-based. But that stuff you can get all in your undergraduate and your MBA. So if you had an undergraduate degree in finance and you did an MBA in that field as well, I don't know that there's anything much more incremental that you're going to get out of CFA, other than, well, ethics and GIPS and asset code is unique to CFA. Everything else is available in a textbook. Everything else. There is no proprietary knowledge at level 1, 2, or 3, other than those three things I just mentioned. There's no proprietary knowledge at those three levels that you cannot get in other books. What you get from CFA is accreditation. That knowledge you can get anywhere, by the way. Pick up any statistics textbook, and you'll get through regression and time series without a problem, and deeper. Pick up any fixed income book, and you'll get through most of level 1, 2, and 3 fixed income without a problem, and much deeper. You can learn it all on your own, but what you won't get is that accreditation for the marketplace. Well, once you have a certain level of accreditation, more is, I mean, what's the point? More is just more. As academics, we don't need the work experience for the charter. So if you see any PhD, CFA, all they did was pass 3 tests. That's all you have to do, is pass 3 tests. You don't actually need the work experience. That's a crime. That is a crime, because I don't think I do believe the lack of relevant experience is not is a hindrance. Let me try to clarify that. When you go to engineering school, all your professors are engineers. When you go to law school, all your professors are lawyers. When you go to medical school, all your professors are doctors. Dental school, all your professors are dentists. It's just the nature of what you have to be before you are one of those. You must become an engineer before you can get the PhD, and once you have that level, you are a qualified engineer. But to teach finance in a business school, you need never have traded a single security in your whole life. You just had to pass a bunch of tests, take a research PhD. And if you have the CFA as an academic, you just had to write 3 tests, but never, ever have to interact with the real world in your life. I find that to be a crime. Why is it that a finance professor need have zero experience whatsoever to teach you what to do, but the doctor does, the lawyer does, the engineer does, and almost every other professional school. And a business degree is not an academic degree, it's a professional degree. And it's the only professional degree that I've been able to find where you don't need a professional to teach you. That's a crime right there. So I think that in assessing anybody for their ability to teach in this space is, number one, they should understand the structure of knowledge and have the ability to simplify the complex. And number two, they should actually do it for a living. Well, that's what I do. If you watch my Market Outlook series every Sunday, you'll see that I am active all the time. I do it all the time. And I think that should be a requirement for more professors in business schools. And if it were a requirement for more professors in business schools, you would all get a far better finance education. Let's see. How long were you an institutional investor? Why you decided to leave it? I was always, even within institutions, I was always what was called a proprietary trader on a prop desk, which means you run your own book. I don't think anyone would need both CFA and FRM. Just have the harder one, which is CFA. FRM is financial risk management. Heavy focus on banks and on banking. Like you go into a lot of detail about the I think it's Basel III now. There is a lot more. It's more about the management of risk, and that's FRM, so it's financial risk, right? It's more about the management of risk, not the management of assets. But I do firmly believe that the one thing that you can manage is your risk. You can't really manage your return. If you buy the S&P, the SPY, you buy the ETF, it'll return what it'll return. There's not a lot that you can do other than use leverage to enhance that return, but it will return what it will return. Risk management allows you to determine what part of the distribution you do not want, and how you can get rid of the part of the distribution of returns you do not want. So there is some value in risk management, because I think that if you run a portfolio from the perspective of risk first, return second, I think you'll do a lot better than if you pay attention to return first, risk second. However, here's the thing. If you have a CFA, you don't need an FRM. It's not that it's redundant. It's that you've already learned how to learn. For FRM, you can learn it on your own, unless there is some reason why you want those three letters, unless there's some professional reason or income reason why you want those three letters. You can learn it on your own. Any other designations that you feel are highly complementary to CFA? Well, the FRM, I think, is complementary, but again, you have to determine whether or not you want it formally or informally. And as far as complementary, CFA is a generalist designation. It's meant to make you a generalist across a whole bunch of topics. It is not a specialist designation. FRM is specialist. It specializes in risk. Kaya, which is the alternative investments designation, is specialist because it focuses on alternative investments. The ERM, which is energy risk management, is specialized because it focuses on the energy market. So you can get specialized after, but CFA is very generalist. It's meant to be a general designation that signals to the market that you have a general understanding of a whole bunch of things. So you are aware of all these things, although you're not an expert in any one thing, but your experience in the job that you have will make you an expert over time in that one thing. Okay, let's see. Update and make QA, and have been watching your videos. Thank you for the content. Difference between FTX and traditional banks. Are they also using client money? I think somebody answered you. No, FTX used money for their venture capital arm, used client money for the venture capital arm. In other words, they were making an investment with their client money. Banks take deposits and lend them out. But that's the deal you make when you go to a bank, is you understand that that's what's going to happen. You do not expect that from your broker. Ooh, that was bad news. As far as any contagion effect on this, I don't know. And I think the market is kind of, you know, when it comes to this, because you're already seeing, BlockFi, after the market closed Friday, announced we're suspending client withdrawals. Like, who's next, right? What person fails there, which causes somebody else to fail, which then starts that cascade. I don't know if it's contained or if it has greater contagion effect. But when you take a market that still has $1 trillion worth of value and you create a run for the door in $1 trillion marketplace, and then tell me that it's going to be contained in that market, I got a hard time believing that. But it's a non-linear outcome. Who the hell knows what's going to happen, right? Let's see. I think we got everything, right? I also face this problem with board memory stuff. Have you described NFTs? Have you just described NFTs with a picture analogy? Yeah. Maybe I just did. That was the whole thing of NFTs, right. I got my CFA a couple of days ago, and I'm a bit bored. Do you have any thoughts about Kaya? Why? Are you particularly interested in alternative investments, or are you just looking for something to do? You first of all have to ask yourself why you're bored. Are you bored because you found no life in CFA, that it didn't light any fire, and you think maybe something else will? And if you think something else will, why? Why do you think something else will? Is there something particular in alternative investments that you say, no, that's it right there? Did the alternative investments readings in level 1, 2, and 3, were they the ones you looked forward to the most? Were they the ones that turned you on the most, where you think that's really where I want to be? Or do you think that while the market is heading there, that's where the money will be? Maybe I'll show up there without really having any love guiding you, other than some strategy of where the money will be. You'd have to tell me why you're interested in CAI first. Tell me why you're bored. If you're bored, like, you find, are you bored because you're not doing anything with this, with the knowledge that you have in your particular job or your role? Or are you bored with it because every time you look at a company and start analyzing it, you think, ugh, I don't enjoy this? If it's the latter one, well, then I don't know that alternative investments is going to be anything better. It's just more of the same with a different asset class. That's all. If it's that you're not applying it in the job that you currently have, you don't have to wait for your job to do it. You can do it on your own. Play the game. Open up a paper account and play the game. Take one sector, get to know that sector really well, learn the sector, take a company, really dive into that company and really know that company. Do it for yourself. Do it for the love of the game. And if that still doesn't turn you on, then, well, maybe this isn't really what you want to do. I don't know. Not enough information out of that question to even begin to answer that. Any thoughts on aerospace and defense industry? I don't know anything much about that space. I've never really invested in that space at all. So, I mean, I really don't know. I have no thoughts on it, other than there are some things that are as old as mankind: farming, prostitution, and war. The three oldest, you'd say the three oldest professions, right? Soldier is just as old a profession as farmer. So is defense going to go away? Is peace suddenly going to break out among humans? I don't think so. The amount of reading per level seems totally absurd. Reading doesn't seem like a viable study strategy. Well, the thing is traditionally, the way that you communicated knowledge from one person to another is through written word. Traditionally, that was the way it was done. Um, we don't really have to do that anymore. We have other ways of communicating knowledge, but it is an institution unto itself. That the textbook industry is an institution. Is that you take a class and where's the textbook? Where's the book that has the knowledge that I'm supposed to read? So if there's a lot to read, it's because it's still relying on the traditional way of transferring information from my head to your head. And since I can't be in front of you all the time, if I codify it and I put it in a book, then everybody can have it. I think you could do the same thing with a video. Is you could put it in a video, but at some point you're going to have notes. You're going to write something down at some point. So it is just the way that it's just a medium through which to transfer knowledge. How is your mental and physical health? What do you look forward to in the next few years? I'm good. I got into a bad place for a while with the business because became so overwhelming, trying to get everything done and trying to do everything. We couldn't hire because you can't find the right people. It was a tough market. And so it just was the right time to sell, because in selling, I no longer have to run the business. I no longer have to recruit. I no longer have to do everything. So there, my mental health improved significantly. When I say mental health, I didn't really have a problem with anything. It's just that when you build a business, you sacrifice every aspect of your life for it. There was no time in the day that was uniquely me. So the person I was before I started and the person I am now are two completely different people. And I find myself having trouble getting back to who I used to be, but maybe I'm not supposed to. Maybe, it's the journey that does change you, and maybe there is no going back. Maybe there isn't. And you have to rediscover who you are after that's all over. My physical health is great. I wish I had better knees, but years and years and years of punishing my knees, and years and years and years of walking a dog, my knees are saying to me, "That's it. We're done. No more." So I just got to convince my knees to come along for the next few years, and I'll be just fine. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. Trying to get to new questions I haven't seen. Can you discuss why you don't trade SPX options and wouldn't prefer? So SPX is the index. The index is, you can trade options on the index, but there is no deliverable on the underlying, which means you have binary options here. I don't mean the options are binary. I mean your options, your alternatives are binary in the sense that they're cash settled. So you either win or lose. You can't, and if you're losing, you can only roll it forward into another one. Well, there are times where I want to be assigned. There are times where I want to buy the index. Well, you have to buy some product. An index is not tradable. It's just an index. So to get exposure to the index, you must buy some tradable product, which is an ETF. And SPY is the most common ETF, the most liquid ETF. So if there are times where I need to combine the underlying in my risk management strategies, it makes a hell of a lot more sense to use options on SPY than on SPX. So I use options on SPY. That's why. They're just easier to manage. They're easier to incrementally increase or decrease exposure. Options on SPX are big and bulky. So you don't have the fine tuning you could have with the SPY. So that's why I tend to just focus on SPY. Okay. What can I do after the level 2 exam while waiting for the results that is both useful to retake in May and for August level 3? So you're going to do August, level 3 in August. You can always start with a section at level 3. And a section that could help by feeding back on level 1, or sorry, feeding back on level 2. There is one section that has, I think, book 2 or section 2 has 2 readings on option strategies and 1 on currency management, 3 on asset allocation, which could help you in if, not much. If I'm going to be honest about it, the 3 asset allocation readings at level 3 don't map back to level 2 very well. The 2 option strategies, while they don't map back very well, they do have some relevance to one of the readings in derivatives. Not a lot. There's not a lot that from level 3 that maps back to level 2 cleanly. There's not a lot. It's just a different, you're not valuing assets anymore. You're learning how to manage a portfolio of those specific assets. So it is different. You can do that, or you can just review the readings at level 1 and level 2 that will help you better at level 3. Those will definitely help you better at level 2 if you don't pass. You can do those. Let's see. Where can I get Hats shirts? Hats will be available for sale near the end of November for the first 10 days of December. I'll have a video up and there'll be a notice on the site for it as well. They're for a particular charity. We're supporting Pathstone this time. How did you know you had a passion for finance? Very early. I just knew. It was undergrad finance course, and it was you had to pick a stock and you had to analyze the stock and write up a recommendation for it. And at the time, I chose Bombardier because it was a Canadian mainstay at the time. So there were a number of companies you could have chosen. I chose Bombardier. And when I first started, it was, I wasn't seeing anything, and I was following the steps, and I was thinking, it was frustrating because I thought, well, all I can say is this or say that. I mean, I don't really know, and I'll just say this and say that, and that really pissed me off because, I hate doing stuff where it's like, well, this is enough to get by. This here you go. This is let me just get it done. But that's all I could do at the time. So about a couple days later, I just said, no, I'm not going to accept it. The assignment wasn't due for a while. I said, I'm just not going to accept it. I can do better. And this was, you didn't have internet then. You had to go to the library and you had to specifically ask for all the annual reports. And then you get the annual reports. And they weren't, you couldn't take them home. It was one of the specific part of the library where you just had to work on them right there. So I did all day. Stayed with them all day. And I just said line item by line item. That's all I care about. And I just did it meticulously. Let me get a feel for the revenues. Let me get the cut. And I went through the whole thing, and then things started to make sense. And I could start to see connections and things. And then I could see where, well, if this went this way, this would be really good. And if this happened, this would be good. And this is bad. And you get to that point where it all just comes together and you crack it. And you really understand this company that if you had to show up for a job interview, you could tell them themselves what their margins were, what their growth rate was, what their cash flows were, where their problems were. You got a problem with cash flow. I can see it happening right now. You knew all of that and you just saw it, and you could then determine whether or not it was worth the price it was selling at. And when you do that, and you're not trading at that point in time, you're not even thinking of actually buying anything. And for many of you at undergrad, it's probably the first time you ever have to think of a stock where you actually have to look at a price and see a price. But then I became hooked to that price. And the only way you could get the price is a quote in the paper, which was the Globe and Mail at the time. So you subscribe to the Globe and Mail just to look at the price of this thing. And I tracked it and I was right. And that was it. That was the end of it. Because in my mind, I saw what I could have made had I bought it, and I just became hooked at that point. It was like, this is it. this is it. This is it. And I didn't always stay on that path, but it was always there, right? Where could I go for deeper learning of the topics covered in L2 fixed income? That's a good question, because the model that you use to price options, you'll never, ever, ever do that in your life. You'll never do it. It's all done for you. So why do we do it? Why do we spend 2 readings looking at building the tree and calibrating the tree and learning about backwards induction? It's because you have to understand how that option is priced, so that you understand what changes the price of the bond, and especially for bonds with embedded options, how it changes the price, what drives the value of that. When would we want to add a callable bond to our portfolio? And when would we want to add a puttable bond? The callable bond will give us a higher yield, but has negative convexity, right? So at level 3, you're going to have to play with that idea of the negative convexity. It's so specialized that you're not going to find a lot of books that would then go into the applied part of it, because it's not really applied. It's a methodology for arriving at a price. But in understanding the methodology, you also understand what drives the performance of that bond, and when you want it and when you want to avoid that particular bond. If you think rates are going to be flat for a long period of time, then convexity makes no sense to have. Callable bonds, you get a higher yield, right? You just understand that that's the outcome that would happen with flat rates. Other than that, I haven't really come across too many books where I say, oh, this is a must-have. I got a bunch of different fixed income books, but they all teach the same stuff in either the same way or a slightly different way. Some are a little bit better on this topic, and this author's better when it comes to that topic, but there's no one that stands out above it all saying this is it. So I don't know that there is an answer to that question. In evaluating stock price, reverse engineering discounted cash flow a better measure, DCF a better measure than DCF? I guess I can't understand that question. I have been a level 2 candidate for over 4 years now. I had purchased your package in 2020. CFA gave us option of refund, so I took it. Need your assistance with May 2023. Oh, you've been a CFA level 2 candidate for 4 years. You're not saying that you've written the exam and failed 4 times. You've been a candidate for 4 years. And it's either, well, at this point, yeah, so either you're going to do it or you're not, right? Need your assistance with May 2023. I don't know what you mean by May 2023 package. If it's something specific to a subscription that we sell, then I'm going to say use the contact us on the website. I think that's what you're asking. At what point in your life your wealth started to grow? Several times. That doesn't mean you get to keep it. Just because it grows doesn't mean you get to keep it. Life can do all sorts of things to you. There was a point where I did very, very well, and the industry I was in fell apart very quickly. Well, you can't win in a dying industry, so you have to pivot and do something else. So it was. I don't know. I don't know that it's in the last few years. Yeah, wealth has increased considerably, but I mean, I sold a business in that period of time, so I spent years building and sacrificing to build a business that had value. But that's what you have to do. I mean, these things just don't come along. You have to make a choice. What's more important, right? I would say that if you're looking at the majority of people Massive, not massive, but significant wealth building usually happens after 40, because up to about 35, you're either paying off your student loans and just trying to get a footing. You need a down payment for your house. If you're going to build a family, you've got that. You're not going to be building significant savings until your income increases and you get ahead of your expenses, which might be your mid 40s. But then the build usually is fairly significant after that. What is your outlook on the Swedish economy during? Well, it's very specific. I don't know that I have an outlook on the Swedish economy. There's a horrible idea to consider pursuing CFA full-time. Is it a horrible idea to consider pursuing CFA full-time? Having difficulty balancing 60-hour work week with CFA study. Oh, I see what you're saying. Depends on what you're doing in those 60 hours. It also depends on the economic reality of your life. And it also depends on where you think the CFA will get you if you leave that 60-hour job, or if it will get you anywhere, or get you to where you want to be. But yes, it would be brutally difficult preparing for CFA exams, working 60 hours a week. I guess I would ask more questions. Is that 60-hour work week getting you somewhere? And if it isn't, if it's a sideways job and you're working 60 hours a week just to put in the hours for the paycheck, cut back hours. If you can't cut back hours and it's part of the career, you have to say, well, where is this career? What's the career path that I'm on and where's it going? And if it's going somewhere that you like, I don't know what you're doing with the CFA. I would say that is that what purpose do you think those 3 letters will add to what you have? 60 hours a week, you're already sacrificing enough for your career that if that sacrifice isn't going to get you to where you want to go, I don't know what will, unless you're on the wrong path and you think the CFA will put you on another path. See, so many questions, right? Like one question is simply just not enough. There's so much detail that you have to tease out of that to figure out, well, and usually when somebody asks me questions like that, oftentimes you have the answers, but you just don't know how to ask yourself the right questions. So it's a matter of asking you, why are you asking that question? And in figuring out why you're asking that question, you will on your own uncover what's important to you or the answer for yourself. But I wouldn't say that I have the answer, but I would ask questions in such a way that it would show you what your answer is. What do you like to do for fun or break? And does Mark Meldrum enjoy sports? I was never a team player on anything. Teenage years, what did I do? Shaolin Kung Fu was a big thing. I was just attracted to the style. I liked it. And I did single sports, like downhill skiing, things like that, stuff that you could do on your own. So yeah, I do enjoy that. New Year's Eve, I used to want to be on a ski hill every New Year's Eve. I just haven't had that opportunity because of the business for a while. And I've been with it for so long that now I find myself living a solitary life in the sense that I don't have friends or anything like that anymore, because when you live so long without them, well, you don't have them. So going skiing alone on New Year's Eve isn't the fun thing to do. What do I do for fun? I have fun all day long, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm having fun right now. This is what I do for fun. I don't know that I would do anything different. I would experience in restructuring and turnaround be helpful in transitioning into PE? Yes, it would. Seems like all PE managers require experience in investment banking. Well, for PE, the big part of PE is understanding how to structure deals, how to put the deal together, and how to put a deal together in the front end to have a better deal at the back end. Restructuring is okay if it's PE that's investing in sort of distressed businesses or buying distressed assets or buying a business that is got something good but is just broken. For the most part, PE doesn't really do too much of that, especially depending on what the firm is doing. Usually, they'll buy a particular company that is capable of what's called bolt-on acquisitions. So you buy one company, and then you start buying other companies that bolt onto that one very nicely, and you keep acquiring, you make it bigger and bigger, and then you rationalize it by taking out all the fat. You maximize that EBITDA, and then you want to push it out onto the other side. So you have to have a very good understanding of how to structure a deal and how to negotiate a deal. So investment banking is probably the best background for that kind of thing. What is the right pathway of getting to an investment bank, and what are the technical skills required? Well, a little bit of real world learning here. That's probably one of the most desired career paths to go into is investment banking, and because it's crowded, and you're competing with good pedigree, top pedigree. And unfortunately, when you get into a space like that, if you were born with a seat at the table, that's a lot better. In other words, if you have the right last name and you come from the right schools and you know the right people, that's a lot better than being really, really good at what you do, but nobody knows you and you came from a second or third tier school, right? So it still is very much a who knows you and who do you know kind of industry. Internships will help, which means you're going to work for free. Internships are a way to show that you know what you're doing if you're not going to be treated as the coffee person, right? I mean, there has to be some value in it for you if you're going to show up for free. But everybody wants that career path. You can get a leg up by graduating from the right school, knowing the right people, and having those people know you. But even still, even from the right schools, you're going to have to intern somewhere to prove yourself. Otherwise, how do they know if you're worth anything? They're going to want to test drive you, and they're going to want to do it for free, right? Let's see. I'm hoping that wealth building starts at 40 would make me feel better about having no money today. Wealth building really starts when you understand one formula. It's not about what you make, it's about what you keep. Simple as that. So somebody who makes 300,000 a year, who spends 300,000 a year, will never build wealth. Somebody who makes 80,000 a year, who keeps 30,000 a year, will build wealth. That's what it comes down to. It's not what you make, it's what you keep. And then you got to put your money to work. Let's see. What time is it here? Ooh, we've been at this 3 hours and 21 minutes, but we still have 142 people on. So let me get to a few more questions here at the end. Let's say we'll go another 10 minutes and wrap up here. What do you think of a career in ESG research? Nope. Absolutely. What do I think? What do I think now? I think no. I think no. That doesn't mean that means anything more than my own personal opinion. G we've had for a long time. G is critical. Governance. You need good governance. If FTX had better governance, that shit never would have happened, and that guy wouldn't be going to jail soon. Governance. If it had good governance, those people, the people wouldn't have lost money. There's $1 billion in client funds that cannot be paid for now. So the G has been with us for a long time. You don't need ESG to have the G. The E, we are paying more attention to the E. Good enough. That's fine. Let's take it with a grain of salt, though. You're going to need a transition plan for a period of time, and there are a lot of companies where E simply just doesn't matter. If you're a law firm, E's not a big deal. The S, I got a problem with because it comes down to this. Whose S? Your S or my S? Is it my opinion or my ideology that matters, or is it your ideology? Whose ideology? Whose opinion of S matters? Is S given through a very Marxist lens? If so, I'm out on that. I'll sign off on that. Thank you. And if the company decides to implement S on a very Marxist perspective, my dollars are out of that company altogether. Who's S? That's a problem right there. And here's the bigger deal. Do I really need the company I'm invested in to express my social concerns? Or do I need that company to maximize its revenue and its profit and return it to me so that I can support the social concerns that I want? I support S. We give money to Jillian's Place, which is a shelter for women who just don't have a good time with men. I'll tell you that. Battered women. I don't like to use the word battered women. Just they've met the wrong men in their life and they need some place to get away. We give money there. Big Brothers Big Sisters, we give money there. Pathstone, this is for kids with mental, I just gonna say mental health issues where they just need some guidance. Otherwise it could have these long-term lasting effects. It could really, we do our own. So what I need my company to do that I invest in is maximize my return so I can maximize what I do. I don't want you making my S decisions. What if I disagree with your S decisions? What if I'm a very proud Christian doing everything I do, but you're donating money to Planned Parenthood? Whoa, 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 whoa. That's not my S, that's your S. And now you're making S on my money. I don't think so. So the S part of it, I think, is causing more division in society than anything else. If you want a cohesive society, stop bloody talking about the S. Let everybody have their own S. Why do we demand that our companies follow our S? You know, the idea that, oh, this person said this over here, you need to, or this person believes this, you need to disassociate, you need to fire them, you need to get rid of. That's bullshit. That's absolute bullshit. Let the customer decide, because that is the truest form of democracy. When S gets a hold of a company, that's a form of dictatorship, the dictatorship of the minority over the majority. You know, Elon Musk put a poll on Twitter. How many people want Twitter to be about political correctness and how many people want it to be about free speech? And this is on Twitter. Over 80% free speech. There's democracy right there. You know, when S gets too far, where suddenly a company decides to choose which movie I get to watch based on its opinion of the content and does not allow me to decide for myself, S has gone too far. S has gone into censorship. S is a dictator. I agree with E. I agree with G. I think S is a big steaming pile of bullshit. That's just my opinion. And I think a company that focuses too much on S, these woke companies, I think in 10 years are going to be very embarrassed for the way they behaved. We can all make our own decisions. We don't need a company making our decisions for us. I'll decide what is important for me. Right? I don't know. Maybe you have a different opinion on that. Let's see. What is the right age of starting a career in finance? I don't know that there's a right age for any of this kind of stuff. I really don't know. You'd say, well, you know, you got to be old enough to vote at least. But Warren Buffett was 14, 12, 13, 14 when he started down that road. By the time he was 18, he was already a millionaire. I don't think there's a right age. I don't think there's a right age at all. So, you know, no, I don't know. What I've observed is that many times human rights concerns is baked into S. Oh, you can have human rights concerns baked into S. You can have social social issues that are important. I just don't think that the companies I invest in should be concerned about choosing which social issues that they want to adopt. I don't think that that's important. You know, we think about representation. Fine. You can have representation. And if a company decides that it doesn't want to live up to representation, then it will not get some of the best qualified people out there. Their fault. And if society is really that offended by them, they don't have to buy their stuff in the marketplace. But to suddenly force them to do it, to elevate aspects of identity above ability. I mean, what's more important? I think representation is important, but is it more important than ability? Right? I mean, you have to ask that question. And if a company is doing something for representation only, I know they're wasting money. I know it's a waste of time. I'm out. I'm out. So Damodaran was really critical about ESG as well. Aswat Damodaran, really critical about ESG. And I agree with him on that one. E, sure. G, absolutely. S, give it a rest. Give it a rest. Or at least don't be so bloody preachy about it, you know? What's your thought on changing answers when reviewing when there's time left in the exam? Do or don't? Change your answer if you say, oh my God, this is wrong. But if you go, oh, hang on. I think if you're gonna double guess yourself, then I would say maybe just leave it. Why is S so big? S is so big because it's a revolution, right? Any revolution is big, and any revolution has to be big to create change. I'm not against the revolution. I'm not against the issues under S. Those, I've never had an issue with any of those S things at all. And I think that you have way too many false liberals today who don't know how to be true liberals because they think it's more important to be seen as being in favor of certain things than to actually do certain things. Somebody put Trudeau's name up there earlier. Trudeau is a false liberal. He's not a true liberal. In the 90s, I voted liberal all the time. I was a fan of his father, Pierre Trudeau. I thought was probably the single best prime minister we've ever had in Canada in our history. I think the Liberal Party has probably done more for Canada than the Conservative Party, really. But I just can't get on board with a phony. I voted for Jean Chrétien. I voted for Paul Martin. But I can't get on board with a phony. A phony is someone who holds up diversity for their own glory, not for other people. He doesn't do it because it's part of his DNA. He does it because he thinks that's what it takes to be seen as being progressive. So when he chose his cabinet in 2016 and he had them all standing behind them, and a reporter lobbed that softball question to him, why does your cabinet look like this? He says, because it's 2016. What an insult to everybody standing behind him. What a slap in the face to every woman, every Indian, every Indigenous person standing behind him. He didn't say, these are the best qualified people for the job. This is what you get when you choose the best qualified people and you ignore identity. He didn't say that. He basically said, I chose them for their identity. That black woman is there because she's a black woman. See the guy in the wheelchair? And look at that. I got 4 guys behind me with a turban on their head. Look at me. So he did it for his glory, and he basically said it and slapped everybody in the face back there by not saying they deserve the job. He says they look like the job, period. What an insult. That's not a true liberal. That is somebody who's pretending to be a liberal, thinking this is what you have to do to be a liberal. It's not in his DNA to be progressive or liberal. That's a phony, and that's why I hate the guy. I think he's a good, well, he was a drama teacher, so he's an actor. And that's what he is. He's an actor. He acts the part. He performs liberalism every day, but he's not a liberal. So it's not that I hate liberals, it's I hate phony liberals. I hate liberals who perform liberalism by saying what you should be doing to be liberal, but they don't do it. That they feel that if I call you out for not doing something, I've done my job because I don't have to do it because I've called you out for it. These people I got no patience for. And I think we're done here, right? What are your thoughts on charter holders, candidates learning about the SABRE model and the usefulness of understanding other modified Black-Scholes models that are used by the sell side? Well, that's the point, right? If they are used. So let me give you a good example of the usefulness of something. I I think you all understand my views, or most of you would know my views on technical analysis. I think that 90% of it is a big steaming pile of crap. Much of it is just crap. But there are some things that are useful because a lot of people use it. So support and resistance, extremely useful to know where support and resistance are from a technical perspective on the market. Extremely useful to know where support and resistance is on the VIX, which will help you determine where entry and exit points are on the market when you don't have technical levels on the market. Those are good because a lot of people use them. But then there are some things in technical analysis that are so narrow and so small that you read it and you think, well, who uses this? And a select few of people use it. Well, that's not enough people using it for it to make a difference on the behavior of the group because it's too small. So I think you've answered your own question there. What's the usefulness of it? Understanding that it is used by the sell side. If it's widely used, then you better know it, or you should know it, because those people will behave as if the output or the outcomes of that matter. But if it's used here or there, if it's this very esoteric formula for doing something, or this method for doing something that's not widely held by everyone, unless it's been proven to have some better insight into doing something that has some effect down the road, what you need in the market is you need everybody to see what you see, or at least everybody having the potential to see what you see at some point. Otherwise, what's the point, right? What do you think about foreigners in Canada that are stealing jobs? Who's stealing a job? Or you think they really deserve the jobs they do? Who's stealing a job? I mean, how do you steal a job? You show up for the job, a bunch of people get interviewed, you get the job. You didn't steal the job, you won the job. I don't know who's stealing the job. I don't like that term, stealing jobs, because I think to myself, wait a minute now. Here's a person who came to Canada. English is a second language, maybe doesn't speak the language very well, and you lost to that person. So what does that say about you? They didn't steal the job, you lost the job. So no, I don't agree with that statement of stealing jobs. They're not stealing jobs. We have a labor shortage. We have a labor shortage. How many more doctors could this country use? I can't get a doctor. Every doctor office I call, we're not taking new patients because there's a cap on how much they can bill the government for doctor's appointments. And once they hit that cap, they don't take on any new patients. So please, I know that India has a whole bunch of medical students and doctors. Send them over. Send them over. They know what a bladder is. They know what a pancreas is. They know what lungs and heart are. I just need a doctor. As it stands right now, I got to go to a walk-in clinic every time I need something because I have no regular care doctor. What's the best way to use MMQ Bank? I don't know that there's a best way to use it, and I don't really have an answer for that. CFA 2 seems to have a free market tilt. Well, it would have to, right? I mean, if you didn't have free markets, there'd be no point in valuation because there'd be some dictated price. Thoughts for candidate with no work experience, majored in liberal arts in undergrad, and are trying to break into the industry? Well, the first thing that you can do is tell everyone taking in liberal arts that it's not a very marketable degree. Sorry, but it's just not a very marketable degree. It's a great degree if you're going to go on a Jeopardy, because there's a whole bunch of categories that you probably know answers to. But it is a tough degree to work with today in that you'd almost want to downplay it. The CFA is a great equalizer in terms of that, because it I don't want to say it in a way that's insulting in a way, but it washes away past sins. So if you have an MBA from Stanford, you don't need a CFA. If you have an MBA from Wharton, you don't need a CFA. But if you have an MBA from a third-tiered school, well, you're not going to compete on Wall Street. You need something to equalize you very quickly. It's a great equalizer. If you have a liberal arts degree and you're trying to break into finance, it's a lot easier to break into finance with a math background or an engineering background or something like that. But with liberal arts, there's not a lot that transfers. But that doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to see what other people can't. You may still have that ability, but you're going to have to prove it. The CFA is a great equalizer in that sense. Now, I don't know what you studied in the liberal arts. Having been in the university system for years, I know it is the one school with the lowest in every school that I've been to. It's the one school on the campus with the lowest placement rate, and usually at the lowest starting salaries. So you take liberal arts to explore. It used to be most education was a liberal arts education till you started with the professional schools, engineering, medicine, business, things like that. And then you would go to school and you'd take a liberal arts program when you had no real leaning towards anything, or if you were looking at law school, because you need an undergrad degree for law school. So you take a more liberal arts education as your undergrad and you go to law school. Now you want to go into finance. CFA is a great equalizer. Seems like besides growth stocks, they have the highest equity duration out of the Dow. Oh, I don't know that. Out of the Dow. What do we got now? Please do the hat sales for India too. The shipping. It's the shipping that kills us. Typically, when companies sell branded product in other countries, they have a distributor in another country who then prints them there, and then they sell them from that location. But shipping them to India, bloody expensive, wickedly expensive. AU market's not really CFA sophisticated. Kaplan is getting more famous. Need your assistance just doing CFA for fun. Should I try again? Kaplan is getting more famous. I don't know. We keep getting bigger. I don't know how they can keep getting more famous. Doing CFA for fun. Should I try again? Okay, well, you have to ask yourself, okay, for fun is great. Doing it when you have an exam in front of you keeps you honest because you'll learn it more than you would if you were just doing it for fun. Are you going to stick with it for 3 years? Because you can't get the 3 letters until you pass all 3 exams and have the work experience behind you. Are you doing it for the letters specifically because it's going to open doors and get you to where you want to go? Or are you doing it for pride of place, having 3 letters behind your name just to have them? Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with having documented accomplishments, but you just have to be clear as to what you're doing it for. And if you have a clear why, then yes. But if there is no why, if you can't come up with a clear why, then no. So should I do this? Well, why do you want to do that? If you have a clear why, then there you go. You've already answered your own question. But if you have no why, right? Interest rate parity, is it always available to profit? Well, there's covered and uncovered interest rate parity. Covered holds because there's a forward contract. Uncovered never holds. I shouldn't say it never holds. It would hold purely by fluke. Let's see. And I think that's it, eh? Favorite book of all time, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Okay, what do we got here? 5:41, 3 hours, 42 minutes. I got to wrap it up here. Not that I got anything to do. It's just my voice is starting to go away after talking for so long. Let's do one more question and we'll wrap it up here. Thank you for your contribution to CSP. I am thinking going into finance. I'm a chartered accountant thinking going into finance. What do you think? Where is most money sitting? Where is most money sitting? I do understand that money can be a motivator, and given a choice between, well, I can go here, I can go there. and I'm indifferent, yeah, take the one with the most money. But to be drawn to where the most money is, what if you don't enjoy what you're doing? What if it's too competitive? What if you, don't have a particular advantage in that particular field? The most money always lies in what you're the best at in any field. If you're the best, you'll rise to the top, and that's where the most money is. That if I put you in an environment where I say everybody, like the highest paying profession is in that room over there. But in going in that room, if you're no good, you'll never get to the highest paying profession. You'll never actually make that money. That you will rise to the top in what you're good at, and what you love doing is what you're going to be good at. If you can combine those two things together, if you can say, this is the part of the market I really love. I love small cap, aggressive growth stocks. Or I love, large cap value, or whatever industry or sub industry or sector or style that you like. If that's what brightens your day, that's the place where you'll be the best, because you'll love what you're doing. And when you love what you're doing, you're going to put in the extra time necessary to be great. If you don't love what you're doing, you will not put in the extra time necessary. You'll never make those salaries, because those are merit-based salaries. It's not the word I'm looking for here. It's not a entitlement that I got hired in this job, I automatically get that salary. No, no, no. The big salaries are merit based. So you want to determine, what field do you want to be in where you have the greatest potential to show your merit. And don't follow the money. The money will follow you. Follow what you're good at. Follow excellence. The money will follow you. Money is an outcome. All right. The goal is to be the best that you can, better than anybody else at something. Money is the outcome. Money will follow you. And I think that's it. Let's wrap this up. It is, it's a long one, 3:45. We had good participation all the way through. I think throughout the whole time, we had at least 150 or more candidates on. I think we answered a lot of questions. I hope that helped a lot of people out. And next Saturday at 2, I'll do level 1. For those of you out there who are level 1 candidates who just sat in on this trying to sneak in some questions. L2 pep talk to end off, since it's an L2 stream, eh? Oh, a Canadian, eh? Well, I don't think that this is the first time you've had an exam. Is your level 2 exam. You know what level 1 is like. You know what you had to do for level 1. You've done cramming for exams before. You've done all of this before. Even if you don't feel prepared to write the exam and you think you're not going to pass the exam, show up. At least show up and see what the exam is about, or decide that you're going to write 3 sections of the exam, and only 3 sections of the exam, and that's going to be what your exam is. I'd say with the amount of time left, this is the time where you say, I'm going to double down, I'm going to lean in, and I'm going to push hard. Because there is only 10 days left. And it can make the difference between this much below the minimum passing line or that much above it, right? That's where you're going to make the difference. And you got 10 days to get that done, which is enough time. Forget Netflix, forget Amazon, forget Crave, forget Disney. Just put all that stuff away. Forget TikTok, forget YouTube, forget all, well, except for my market outlook. Everybody tune in for that. Don't give up on that. But get rid of everything else, lean in, and that's it. Do the best that you can do, so that when you show up that day, you don't leave saying, I should have, that you say, I gave it my all. I gave it my all. And go from there. All right. We're good. I'm going to, I hate to just say goodbye and then log off. So I'm going to click end stream in 15 seconds here. Somebody asking about packages paid for. Use contact us for anybody who has any questions about packages paid for or subscriptions. Use the contact us. I'm an ambassador now. I'm not the owner of the company, so you're going to have to talk to those guys. Ciao. Bye.